6:02, I'm going to call to order the Concord-Carslisle Regional School District to order.
I'll call the Concord School Committee to order.
Perfect. So I think just for tonight, we're going to have, most of the meeting is going to be focused on the budget in somewhat of a listening session, I'll say. First pass. We're going to go even more depth in a couple of weeks. We do have other things to cover, but just wanted to make note of that. But without further ado, why don't we do the CCHS student update, and I'll turn it over to the two reps.
Hi. Hi. Okay, I'm gonna share it. Okay, so for student updates, the chorus pop-ups happened on the last day of school before winter break, and that was a really enjoyable event. They went all around the school in the different areas, and they sang a bunch of songs about the holidays, and it was a really great time. And we get to kind of leave our classrooms and peep out and watch them, so it was really fun. And then we were also now back from winter break, which is great. And last week we just had Thursday and Friday, which was, I think, a really nice time to just kind of get back into the groove. And then we get the weekend, and now we're back, and students are kind of getting ready for midterms. And so yeah, midterms are next week, and it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we'll have 2 blocks every day where you might have a midterm test. And finally, for me, the MMEA Eastern Senior District Festival is happening this weekend, and this is a really cool event, and students in orchestra, band, and chorus will audition in November, I believe, and if they're chosen, they get to attend this really big, awesome festival, and they sing a bunch of songs, and it's a really cool event.
We are finally reaching the end of the semester. I know a lot of my friends are very excited to start their new classes, and it's just kind of like almost a fresh start heading into the new year, so I feel like a lot of students are excited for that. Ms. Hammer, the administrative assistant, has retired after 32 years working at CCHS. Yesterday there was a clap out held to send her off, and it was just really wonderful to see the entire school like come together to celebrate her retirement. So yeah. Of course, the shameless CC Peter plug. CC Peter Spring Musical Shrek is happening, and during February the auditions are coming up, so yeah.
That's awesome.
That's it for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, girls.
I was just gonna say, I think the one of the things we were talking about earlier with Miss Hammer, Carrie shared it on our communications. It's so great to see everything on Instagram. I know all the schools have some kind of a presence, but it was great to feel like we were a part of that. Especially those of us who know Miss Hammer. So it was pretty cool to see the support that you all did for that pretty big milestone. So thank you very much.
And I apologize, those in person in the room, you can't see people on Zoom or the screen, so we're going to have to do our best on that tonight because of the technology issues we're having.
We're working on them.
And I'm not sure if our reps know this, but there are a few school committee members that Mrs. Hammer was actually there when they were in high school. So, just a couple.
And Aisha.
Not you, Julie, no, okay, not me either. But she's really been an asset to the high school, so thank you for all of her service, and I hope that she really enjoys her retirement.
Yeah, and well-deserved.
Great. Awesome. Any questions for the students?
No, good luck with midterms.
Yeah, go study, girls.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right, great. So we're going to move into the chairs update. We're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit outside of at least my personal comfort zone, but I think it's important. As part of the chairs update for the region, I wanted to circle back to an ask from last month, which was to comment and or respond to some of the public comments, especially some of the recent ones. Additionally, I've been in this role for about 6 months now, and I've had an opportunity, I think, anytime you're going into a new year, whether it's resolutions or just having a chance to sit back and reflect on things, it's important to, I think, look at the progress, the challenges that you faced, conversations. I think it's a privilege to be an elected official and to be entrusted or appointed, or for those of you that are come here as part of your job, like, we appreciate you showing up. And I think just the community members that we engage with, obviously there's those of you that show up, and we appreciate that. I think a lot of conversations I know that I have, I do pick up of my kids whenever I possibly can, and I get a lot of feedback at in the pickup line, at the grocery store, a lot of feedback. And I think it's really important for us to share that feedback, and we don't always get a chance to pause and do that. I've also said this before in smaller settings. I grew up in Andover, where it's a similar size town, a little bit bigger than Concord. I've always been involved in the community, and I think it's really important for us to find a path to lowering the temperature in the town. Not just in the conversations that happen here on Tuesday nights. This is such a sliver of other conversations that happen, but really in the town of Concord, Carlisle, Boston, but anything that's around the school specifically, I want to figure out a way to lower the temperature. I'm aware that can't just happen by saying it or snapping my finger. We need to do the work. And there's been no shortage of that. And I would say, after spending a lot of time over winter break, reading, reflecting, looking over a lot of data on the schools. I know Andrew and I dug into YRBS data on New Year's Eve day. Our joint community, like all of us, I think we have a lot of highlights and a lot of things that are really tough. But a path forward is visible and attainable. I really do believe that. I hope between some of my comments, my peers' comments tonight, reports from our liaisons, and the work we have in front of us, that we can build more trust through our actions and impact as we move forward. I start with the goals at most meetings. We're not going to do it tonight, but we are at the next January meeting. And the reason is I think it gives us grounds to be committed to each other, to the work we do. And I think it's important because at the beginning of the time, we all raised the concerns that we had, whether it was things like math curriculum or IEPs or student achievement gaps, things around out-of-district placements and things with the budget. We have a lot of those things, and we all made a lot of commitments to that. The second piece is, I think, we've also made commitments to groups that were traditionally marginalized, disabilities, and we haven't even dug into the topic of socioeconomic pressures that I think is a really big deal in this community. So one of the first things we reviewed through this lens was the YRBS results. As a recap, I was asked to cover some of this. I saw the note in the bridge. We reviewed some of the key themes back in October and made a commitment to revisit in February. We are still on track to do this if the committee feels this is necessary. There are follow-up questions on specific topics, and we have sent those to the guidance counselors, school psychologists, and Emerson directly for follow-up. A few of us in this committee, like I mentioned, have looked at those one-on-one. It wasn't just Andrew and I, others have done that as well. And we do that because we want to ensure we fully understand the data, and we want to make sure we have as few blind spots as possible. And a couple of things I want to ensure is that, one, we understand the feedback from the community, the impact, and the pathways to improvement. And two is, as a school committee, is the investment we are making in professional development, programming, and overall support of student success making the impact that we hope for? The hardest thing about the survey and the other surveys that Dr. Hunter, Ms. Chin, and others administrators cover is that we are working with children. When we specifically look at the high school, we are talking about teenagers. We all want these results to be 100% or 0%, depending on the framing of the question, meaning we want 100% of kids to feel belong, we want 0% to be bullied. We are likely never going to make those, but that is something that we strive for, and that is why we continue to come back here. And while I'm not going to go through the full 80 pages of the YRBS report, I will say that these results directly impact our investment as a school committee. So programming, full-time employees, professional development, transportation, these investments are within our purview. So when we see that bullying is up for multiple types of groups of kids, we ensure we have a path to support staff that they can improve this. We as a school committee do not walk the hallways or stand in the classroom. We ensure that the administrators have what they need to make these programs work. So when we see that suicide and depression is down significantly in all categories of kids from 2022 to 2024, we know these programs are working and our investments should continue. This is why we work so hard with FinCom on our budget, fighting for full-time employees, extra transportation to ensure inclusion in activities and programming. The work we did with out-of-district guidelines and budget is a good example of how we can make our role that focuses on budget and achievement go hand in hand in support of children with disabilities and their families. We will continue to do this with initiatives and other student groups. To that end, I've asked Dr. Hunter to speak to some of the programming. We're going to cover that tonight. We also have a pretty packed agenda for the next meeting that we'll get into. And I want to just make sure that we continue to communicate that. As many of you've heard me say at the start of a lot of meetings, is what we focus on, again, is our goals. And so we will monitor this and pivot as needed. That is the good thing about taking this time to reflect at this point. We have covered the achievement gap with Shelley, and we'll get an update later this quarter, as we talked about in the December meeting. Lastly, and on a more personal note, there are a lot of comments, questions, and difficult conversations that happen outside of these meetings. The graffiti incident, for example, was one that was monitored closely by Dr. Hunter and the high school administrators. It was very upsetting, I know, for a lot of people. We received updates. I personally sent follow-up questions and oversight to Dr. Hunter up to the final hours of the break for the holiday, arguably over the holiday break. Double-checking on procedures, double-checking on law, communication, safety checks, any lead or insights that I personally heard, I passed along. I personally solicited feedback from neighbors, from friends and other closely associated with the CCHS community, and I know other committee members did too. I did this because while I have confidence in what the co-principals did to communicate with the CCHS student body, families, and faculty, I do, and I think we all do as a committee, understand that this is incredibly upsetting, and it's upsetting to the entire community, whether you have students in the school or not. As somebody who comes from a minority group, I know that cold feeling in your bones when being called a slur, being a target of hatred and injustice. In fact, when I was elected in Carlisle, I don't think we talk about Carlisle very much. The first week that I was there, we had a protest at a student-led pride event. There were horrible things written on posters by adult protesters in the sliver of the community near the school that they could be on. I saw things that were directed at me and my family, and my stomach turned. So during one of the public comments, there was someone who said the whole town is asking you to do better when it comes to the topics of DEIB. I heard that loud and clear. I would say that that is where the problem is for me, candidly. The whole town is not saying that, and that's the problem. That's the hardest part of being part of a minority group. Most of the time, the majority does not understand how you are feeling, and it's not always their perspective. And so it's partially happens to be that they need a nudge. The majority needs a nudge. And that is why we have to find a way to bring a temperature down so that they're listening and lean into the things that are in place, make them stronger, make them more inclusive, and where things need to be ripped down in order to build them back stronger, let's do it. And let's have a conversation, even if it's hard. I think there are a lot of people who want to join this mindset, participate, be an ally, but they don't see an on-ramp to do so, and we need to improve this, not just at the schools, but in the whole community. And we as a committee are steadfast in our commitment to not just this incident, but to all incidents around hate. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. It's just something that was on my mind the entire break, and I want to make sure it's one of the first things that I address as we enter 2025. So, thank you. On everything, I think we're good, right?
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
That was incredibly powerful.
Thank you. So we are, like I said, steadfast. I'm going to turn it over to you for the superintendent's update, if that's all right?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think, just my own one comment to follow up on Julie's. I don't think we're in disagreement on core values. I don't think we're in disagreement on the goals. Somehow we're struggling to talk on the hows and the whats. And I couldn't agree more that I think we need to try to tone the temperature down and have conversations that I know can move us forward, because they have in the past. And we've been at temperatures frankly higher than this, and made our way back and made some real progress on a lot of different things. So I think the groundwork is there. I think we all just need to catch our breath, take all the emotion that comes with it, which is really, really hard, right? It's all very emotional and important, and that's why it's emotional, and try to have that reset to go forward, because I don't think there's anyone here in the community that isn't completely steadfastly committed. So that said, my updates are more logistical, factual in nature, and a little bit eclectic because we're just coming back to the second half of the school year and there's lots of moving pieces at this point in the year. What I didn't get into is updates that almost naturally are going to evolve through the budget discussions, at least at a high level, or have standalone presentations coming up. So that's usually the goal of my updates. And honestly, some nights I want to come in and celebrate everything. Tonight I'm going to be a little more like, well, there's some of this going on too, and things we have to account for. But anyway, tonight it's a little bit more eclectic. So we have nothing like opening and talking about DESE and the coming 2 rounds of site visits that we have. One, we have March 18th, DESE will be here. They're visiting all METCO districts. Really just not at all in a high stakes way, but just to come see and hear and be part of what we're doing. So we're looking forward to that. We see them a lot on Zoom meetings and such, and it'll be great to have them come out and actually be in buildings and see kids and all of that. DESE's also hosting a directors and superintendents meeting next week that I will attend along with Andrew Namichi. We have a third, oh yeah, go ahead.
What's the output of the DESE visit? Do they send a report? Or is it?
No, this is, unlike the other DESE visit I'm going to reference in April, it's completely non-evaluative. Okay. It's really, Darcy Fernandez, who's the senior commissioner that oversees METCO, just wants to really get to feel what's happening, spend some time here, see how our structures are, meet some of the people, meet some kids. It's really just to put people to the things she hears, which I'm actually refreshed by. DESE doesn't do that much of that. It's usually very high stakes, so it's great to have them just come out and listen and learn. The superintendent and directors meeting with DESE's next week as well. There are some changes to the grant formula. There's been a hold harmless provision there, which we probably will reference later, that is expiring. And given our enrollment numbers, we're going to have less grant money in the future. The Playbook Initiative, CMS is going to take their school-wide project and make their way to the 5th grade again in the next few weeks. So they'll be running their scenarios, their bias scenarios with the 5th grade. Last year, it was jaw-dropping what the 5th grade students were able to talk on and the conversations that they had as they were presented with difficult situations that they might experience. We started to plan for the Nubian Square trip for all of 9th grade, where they go to METCO Inc. and they tour that part of town and visit some of the local stores, and usually the highlight is the restaurants and the food. So excited for that to get going, and those are usually late spring when the weather's really good. We're meeting with the leaders of the calculus project next week. CCHS has been on ongoing, very regular conversations with the high school about where we are in terms of student, both achievement and placement. Placement's the big one, right? Because to get to calculus, you have to be on a certain trajectory. We had a really important meeting a couple of weeks ago where the high school leaders went over to the middle school, and a few of us were there just to be there, but we weren't really the main participants. But the high school administration and department chair talked directly to the middle school teachers about the importance of that 8th grade to 9th grade transition. It was really an important conversation. I think it opened up some of our structural challenges, and just, guess what? Communication makes us half the difference, right? Where people are like, oh, I didn't really realize the impact of this decision becomes that. And I think we're already going to be in a bit of a better place just from having the discussion. So Adrian Mims will be out here with us next week. Many did attend the METCO conference in December. We always try to send a solid cohort to any conference METCO's running. Ideas did their professional development with all of 9th grade earlier in the fall. The committees I sit on at the state level, the DESE Racial Imbalance Advisory Committee, and my MASS Racial Equity and Diversity Committees are both meeting. They're on the same schedule every month, so I have both meetings next week. Always an exciting time to hear not only what's going on in the state, but try to guide whatever influence those groups can have. We're very heavily engaged in the work of choosing a literacy program at K-5, so Shelley will certainly be giving you updates on that. It's really important to note, like a K-5 literacy curriculum when a district's never had one, that is a lot about achievement gap. It's going to eliminate the, it depends on what teacher you have, what skills you get, or it depends on a whole bunch of other things. Everyone will get the same tier 1 support and exposure, and that is half the battle sometimes. It then informs a more effective tier 2 because you know what happened in tier 1 and where those double dips need to happen and things like that. So this is really, I think, we made gains with bringing in foundations and some other phonemic stuff, but to actually be looking at a complete literacy program, evidence-based, that's a really important step in this district, especially where that just has never been the way we operated. So we're excited. There's a lot of momentum. Shelley, we're talking about adjusting plans. Like, I was the one, I'm like, we're not getting a whole big curriculum, and we're not doing it this year, Shelley. Just learn and listen. Here we are. We do try to take the feedback in, and the teachers are ready, and we made some gains and learning what's out there for programs, and there's some really high-quality things out there that didn't even exist a few years ago, which is what my concern was. And so we're moving the plan along as we go.
Is the goal to choose a program before the end of the year and launch it? And
so the goal is to choose a program before the end of the year. She's got a committee getting up and forming to review 3 programs. The goal is to choose one and then ask for early adopters for next year.
Okay.
So like the budget, when you hear it, is really about 50%-ish, if that many of them volunteer, to get going, with then a second year to get to full implementation.
Is it K-5 or K-2?
K-5.
K-5.
Yes, this is the comprehension. That's the easy way to say it. It's the comprehension side of the work, knowledge-based evidence work. So more to come on that, a lot more to come, but we're actively talking about that a lot. It's one of the big things Shelley's doing. A lot of other big professional development work going on. Like, for example, this afternoon I was at the high school staff meeting. They used it to bring Challenge Success in, which is the organization we're members of, which really is about working with high-performing districts and looking at how we maintain the 3 words they really drove home: engagement, well-balanced, and belonging. Talk about how it all fits in, right? And they started to talk about, like, engagement matters, and to 100 teachers at once said, let's talk, take a few minutes and think on where your kids are. They're using the Challenge Success survey data that just showed that about 50% of kids self-identify as just doing school. Right? They know how to do it. Are they loving it and thriving in it, and what that next level of descriptor is? A third of them are. And do we have a population that are disengaged and not really at even that level of doing school? And we're grateful it's small, but it's anybody in that category is too big. And we're definitely looking at the subgroups of who's predominantly in that group, and that's certainly concerning, that it's the marginalized populations, and that's where our work needs to really focus.
Do you need anything from us on that?
No, I think you're going to see budgets that include another year of membership with Challenge Success, and all the other organizations we're working with, and the providers. Lavinia Group's the other really strong one that's come in this year at the high school and is working with every content area department and looking at their, whatever their area of focus. For math, it's the levels and what we're doing at each level. With science, it was more focused on cultural competency per se and access. So each department has its own little way of approaching it, but all of it's about the same, which is consistent curriculum, equity for all, opportunity experiences for all, because guess what? The structures we've had have eliminated opportunities for some kids, and that's the really important work we need to be doing. So. Middle school's really spending some, aside to Playbook and a number of other initiatives and a new school. Inclusion is one of their big topics, and really looking at how students with disabilities are integrated into classrooms and supported more extensively in the classroom than out, which is a pretty significant change for us that we're queuing up. So, DESE is doing an organizational review with us to change topics. In April, they'll be looking at human resources and personnel, curriculum and instruction, and finance. So we've already had to do some survey work. We have more surveys to do. We have a lot of documents to provide. They will be on site for multiple days the week before break. That does result in an extensive report of strengths, needs, likely some follow-up plans depending what they see and name to us. So we're gearing up for that. We've been doing bits of it, but the real big push show's coming up now. And because I'm on the RIAC committee, we got to preview the rubric that they use, which they wanted input on that committee because they've made it a lot more of a focus on equity and opportunity gap. So I got to see it on both sides, and now I guess give them feedback on implementation. I'm going to just mention the homeless shelter a little because it's going to come up as the budgets come through. It's an evolving situation right now with different plans being made by the state. We have 22 open rooms because of the critter issue. We were told, I took a call from the state that they are planning to fill them all. We are not closing before June 30th. It's a slow roll for them to fill them, so I don't know quite how that's going to evolve, but that's a lot of empty rooms all at once, obviously. And then we do expect to be in some state of weaning out over the course of the 25-26 year, which Bob's going to mention a few times in the budgets of, wow, that's going to be an interesting position to be in. So right now, we're supporting kids who are both in the shelter and attending our schools, in the shelter going to school of origin, kids who were in the shelter and have housing and have chosen to stay with us for the year. It's really a web of transportation for one, but then other things as well. So we're loving it. We're loving seeing families get housing, right? That's the goal, and we're thrilled by that. And we're kind of enjoying the kids who are staying, where we get to keep them with us a little bit longer. We have one family that got housing in Concord, which was really super exciting. So anyway, the work is happening there. Other upcoming events that seem worth noting, because there's a pretty robust list of them, more community-based and public-facing. Wes Woodson is coming to the high school January 22nd at 7 o'clock. He's here to talk on anxiety, and he's a diverse facilitator and comes in with that lens, so we're excited. CEF is sponsoring that. He will also meet with the kids at the high school the day before. So we're excited by what he's going to bring for opportunities. CPAC's continued its series. You've probably seen they've put together a series of events for the first time. I'm only going to highlight the last one, even though they've all been fantastic. They have managed to not only book, but fundraise to bring in Kareem Weaver, who's a really top reputable name in the equity work in literacy. So we're all excited to have him in town, and they've got a panel to complement that, and Millie Abergy Thomas, METCO CEO, is going to be part of that panel. So we're excited to hear his thoughts and how it all balances. I think there's a DESE leader there too. I forget some of the other, but it should be a really well-rounded conversation. Lunar New Year, this is a festival that we had part in kicking off and now don't really do a whole lot with. It's just grown into a community event. Lunar New Year celebration at the high school February 8th at 2 o'clock. We're, as a district, going to sponsor a movie showing as part of Black History Month on February 12th, the 6888. Not to be a spoiler, but it's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, you should. But we want to do that as a community and celebrate. It's really about celebrating the accomplishments of a Black women's unit in World War II, and pretty amazing. So you're all going to watch it now, but still come. Some really great names in there, and it's a pretty great movie. And then we're sponsoring, and this is actually, both of these are through Andrew Dimitri's work in the DEI side of the district. The Right to Read is another documentary on the importance of literacy and the ongoing impacts of a lack of being literate. So, and again, it's equity gap. It's all the things we're talking about, achievement gap and equity. So that's on March 5th at 6. So you'll be seeing all these go out and try to really solicit a lot of interest and engagement. So there's a lot happening, and that's just a tip of it all, but I thought we'd start to queue up some of those and then use the next meetings to talk about some other aspects of, try to be comprehensive in what's happening around the district. Thank you.
Awesome. I know Carrie and I brought it up, but are you excited about the middle school?
Well, I was saving that for the Concord School Committee portion, but yes, I mean, and just for the sake of everybody, when we get there, I'll have pictures and really, you'll see me light up then. But the middle school, we're in really great shape. There's don't get me wrong, there's a lot to do, but I think we're over the big humps, and we should be opening on time. The auditorium's still sort of the swing space. We're in the weeds now, both on the construction side and the logistical side. Mr. Cameron being in the room with you would be jaw-dropping what he's managing right now. Boxes arrived to the middle school today, so they can start to pack. Really, really exciting. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. I walked it twice last week, and we'll get out there again this week. And now as the finishing touches happen, right, that's when you're like, wow, it was amazing before, but now it's just beautiful. Really seeing it all come to life. So it's a really exciting time, really exciting. So we're going to celebrate with the whole community. A little bit under the gun that the kids have to get in first, probably, because it's also, tight on time. But certainly we've got months ahead of the celebration, and we'll look at, everything from the sign and how the celebration is. And Justin's really thinking out of the box, and what an opportunity this is to unite. Unification is his theme, uniting us. Ellen's name being as part of that feels appropriate. He's thinking, a community's had 2 schools for 40 years, and now you're going to put all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in one school for the first time, and really trying to take that as a powerful message. And I'm not going to spoil what he's planning, but he had my jaw dropping last night with the list of, does this all sound okay? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, he took the logistics and is making it visionary, as he often does. So a lot more to come. Thanks for asking. Yeah, we can talk more on that later.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Is there a middle school musical? Or
There is. They're doing one last musical in Sanborn.
Okay.
Yes, the 2 weekends before we move out.
Oh, my gosh, wow.
What is it? I forget now. Shrek's at the high school.
What is it?
Why don't I know? I do know that. I'll find it before
I
we.
think we have a student who knows. Suzical.
Thank you. Yes, Suzical. Oh, thank goodness you're here. It is Suzical. I knew it was one we all knew. Yeah. So they're getting rolled up and ready and gonna do that right before we move.
Yeah, great, oh, wow.
It's really exciting. One more in that Sanborn auditorium.
Get it in.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome.
So more to come on that later.
Perfect. All right, we're going to move to public comment. As a reminder, we're going to try a format of 10 minutes for comments related to the agenda at this point in the meeting, and then general comments later in the meeting. So with that, I have Michael Williams.
Michael Williams, 1284 Sudbury Road. At the December 10th, 2024 school committee meeting, with our superintendent's recommendations, the committee discussed and approved a revision to policy BDCB. The policy governs the representation of the committee on for our Boston medical families. As the Concord Medical PTG disbanded November 18th, a sentence was added to that policy. Should the Medco PTG not be active, the school committee will run an interim election. As written, this policy revision could give the body that played a role in the dissolution of the Medco PTG a hand in determining the candidates standing for election in this reconstituted body. Though policy BCDB states that all Boston resident Concord or Concord-Carlisle Medco parents or guardians and alumni families will be eligible for these positions, at no time during the discussion was it stated that all 123 families would be notified by the committee of their eligibility to stand as candidates for election. With respect to the minutes of the December 10th meeting, I would ask the committee to clarify their position and formally stipulate that all eligible Concord-Carlisle Medco families and alumni will be contacted, apprised of their eligibility, and offered the opportunity to stand as candidates for election to the representative body. Anything less would be anti-democratic. With respect to your comments, Chair Viola, I really appreciate them. And I hope that it's emblematic of what happens going forward. I believe that making a move toward a more inclusive community, a more inclusive system, involves leadership. I do also believe that the families of Concord, Carlisle, and Boston want an open and just body. They want us to do better. And to help toward that end, I find myself drawn to stand as a candidate for a seat on the school committee in the April 2025 election. all in the hopes that I can play a role in helping this body to build a community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything online?
No.
Okay. I was just gonna say, Kirsten, if you want to talk now, that's fine.
Kristen Haggerty, Revolutionary Road, Concord.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to echo Mr. Williams' comments. I do appreciate the time that you took to share your comments, and I'm encouraged. And I'm hopeful that some of the actions that build trust involve kind of getting some of these items on future agendas. So for example, we just had another resignation of a METCO director, Ms. Jemison, who, if you hadn't met her, she was a fabulous force. And for those of you who are new to the committee, you might not have met the previous METCO directors, Felicia Paisley, and before her, Heidi Harris, as well as two other METCO folks who worked in the Alcott building when I was there, Denier Watford Jackson and Savon Dickerson. It's a significant number of staff who've left. That was prior to Dominguez resigning and prior to the dissolution of the METCO PTG. And so what I would ask is that there is time on the agenda to kind of look at what are the health issues that are plaguing our METCO staff, who I have known over the years who have been fabulously devoted to our students, and how can we make sure that when we attract good quality candidates that we can retain them and help them to thrive as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Were you gonna say something, or are you good? I was just gonna say, I think there's just the one piece, I think, sorry, let me just see where I wrote. I took a note during both of those.
I think just to maybe clarify our policy discussion that we had in
Yeah.
December, because I think, I'm looking at it now, vacancy occurs, the METCO PGJ may nominate a person for appointment to complete the unexpired two-year term. So I think our discussion in December, it was all about the PTG running that election, not the school committee being involved in it. So I just wanted to, put that out publicly, that it is going to be run by the METCO PGJ. That was my understanding when we left in December.
No, but we're gonna, so I don't wanna
talking
skip
about
to it, but
this.
we're
Okay.
gonna talk about it
Okay.
during our chairs and liaisons update, so I do wanna make sure it's covered. Yeah, I have other comments that I'll save for
Okay.
that section. Yeah,
Thanks.
I think there's any other comments.
no, nothing online, right? Okay, so moving to the consent agenda. I know there were some typos that we caught beforehand, Cynthia, I know those have been since corrected.
Okay.
The other one was the anchor program was added, the Nordic ski trip was added. I think everything is up to date, so.
Yes.
Did you have any other clarifying questions, or was that?
No, the itinerary just had the wrong dates.
Oh, okay, great.
So I assume this is the correct date.
Correct.
Yes, for the Nordic ski trip. It had the 10th, the 12th.
24th to the 26th is the correct date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So I'll make a motion. I'll
Yeah,
move
perfect.
that we approve the consent agenda as written on the January 7th, 2025 agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes said Romano. I said, Ray Romano's on our committee?
No, sometimes that does happen. Romano
Really
does sneak
exciting.
in there. Mrs. Marino, I don't know.
Oh, my gosh.
Ms. Romano.
Correspondence, do you wanna start with CPS?
Yeah, there was none, so easy update.
Yeah, that was tricky at the beginning.
Well, there was one, but it was meant for the region, so I figure you can. Did you
Yes.
see that
Yes,
email?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. So we just had a couple from, for correspondence at the region. One was, we have our band performing in April, in Connecticut. So we were all invited. Unfortunately, it's during
Great.
school
Vacation.
break. But Dr. Andrew, you're gonna be there.
I am going to go because my parents will also get a lunch out of me if I go, so that worked out beautifully.
Yeah, that's great. So we wish them well, we wish we could be there. If anything changes, I would love to go.
They will also be in the 250th.
Yes, they will, that same week.
So
Yes.
if you're around for that, then you can see the band perform.
Yeah. And actually, Mr. Nochi's coming to our February 4th meeting to give you a bunch of highlights.
Great.
That was going to be the piece, sorry, in response. So I just want to make sure everyone in the audience, based on those comments, we do have Millie from MECO coming at our next meeting in 2 weeks. So we will be covering a lot of MECO topics.
Yeah, Andrew will be here too.
Sorry.
Both of them will be here.
Yep.
Mimichi.
Yes.
We're not going to go to Boston?
Andrew's here.
We may, we probably are still going to go to Boston. We just invited Millie to come out for an update out here first.
Yep, good. Yeah, and then speaking of that, because we're not going to go through goals, we're going to go through them next week, but I want to make sure Brian and I did meet. We're going to do the coffee in Carlisle on January 27th. Hopefully getting parents, I just have to knock down the community room, but I will get that.
What time is it?
Probably at 9 in the morning.
Okay.
Just waiting for me to take the action to, we've agreed on a time, which that's half the battle with the morning, but we're going to shoot for 9. And we're going to hopefully get the community room. I just need to push that email out. All right, and then, just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then we did get a message in support of the amenities building from somebody that also sent one to FinCom. Those are the correspondence from the region. Moving to the liaisons update. Aisha, do you want to start with what we've just been talking about with our goal around just when to get a candidate going and how to, we're working on the communication? Anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to, it's hard, the engagement in Boston being so far. This is a huge ask, but it's definitely rewarding. It's being involved in the school committee and being, having a seat at the table is so important. And I hope that MECO families that are current MECO families or alum would take this opportunity to become a part of the school committee. It has been rewarding to me, and just moving forward in a positive light and having a seat at the table and your opinion being heard, I think is important for the safety of our kids and to know what's going on and having a real pulse on what's going on at the schools.
Yep. Yeah, and so I think, just candidly, like from my perspective, because I've said 6 months in here, I'm learning about the process that Aisha and Domingos went through a couple of years ago. That was the first time. For me, it was actually really helpful to go through the policy to learn how you did it before. And our goal is to get it filled. I mean, we talked about March having somebody sitting here. I think the hardest part is, like you said, it's getting the commitment, and that's widespread across all the communities. It's a commitment, and but it's an important one. So we just got to work through the details, and we will be communicating that some of it is just in flux, and we're working on it. But our goal is to have somebody here in March, is to the best of our ability.
Is there a coffee coming? You talked about the Carlisle one. Have we scheduled the Boston and the Concord ones? Would that be an opportunity that maybe?
That's a great idea.
Did you do it in early February?
The one we did in the library.
That was the better one than the one.
That was well attended,
Yeah.
I thought. Because we did one in the library and then we did one at a coffee shop. But I felt like the library one, maybe it was more central, I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe that's an opportunity
That was
to
like in the
talk
Social
to people.
Plaza, like
I
in
don't
Milton. Is that where we did the second one?
It was in Hyde Park.
No, not the library one.
It's South Bay. It's in South Bay.
South Bay.
But
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's people can meet members of the school committee, see what it's all about, talk to you. Might just be an opportunity to talk to people.
I know tomorrow there's a MECO meeting,
Okay.
MECO parents meeting, that I'm gonna jump on tomorrow night to hopefully talk to the parents and to, and just to let them know, this is opportunities out there and what it entails and if they have any questions, so.
Perfect.
And I think, Dr. Hunter, you're including it in your Friday.
Yeah, if we get a written piece together, we can put it in there as well as, and actually, we can distribute directly to the entire METCO parent population. If you get us some written things, we can push that out through Connect Ed to make sure they all know the opportunity is awaiting them.
Yeah.
We're eager to hear. Okay, so I'll work with you on that.
Okay.
Awesome.
The other thing, just maybe is more of my update than your liaison reports, but I have been in touch with a few parents on the PTG side and trying to make sure that group doesn't go defunct. That would certainly be a loss to everyone. So I don't have any takers on that yet, but we're going to keep working on that as well so that that group can reform itself and look at what its missions and goals might be. I think there's a need for culture building and community, and I think a collaborative parent group would be really exciting to have
Great.
for that. So we're working on that too.
Okay, great. All right, awesome. From the liaison, Tracy, you had one from the select
I
board?
did. Yep, Select Board met last night, and MEMA is offering a training on January 11th at the high school, and it is called Until Help Arrives. And it's a community training program of what to do if you encounter an emergency before the first responders arrive. So this is in preparation for the April 19th parade. I think it got sent to everyone in every committee, so if anybody's interested, please RSVP to that. The Doug White Fields, there was an update there, so I figured because they sit on our campus, we have nothing to do with them, but I just figured I would update the committee as to what they said last night. The cost estimate is well within the budget. They amended the scope of the budget and sent it out to Gale Associates and 2 additional consultants. They expect the proposals this week and then the team will meet next week. They're going to work with the Rec Commission, and they said they've reached out to Aaron Johnson
Aaron is
already.
sitting on the committee, yeah.
So Aaron's there. They've also met with CC Fields, and they are looking to do replacement in the summer of 2025. So that has been significantly pushed up. So hopefully that will happen at the right exact time.
Well, that's why it's important. When they invited Aaron, we were excited
That's
because
great.
that'll be why that will work out.
Yeah, that's great. They're adding a couple meetings. They have a February 3rd meeting on land acquisition. There may be a potential May 5th meeting to approve next year's town calendar, so stay tuned for that. The warrant opens on January 20th and closes on February 19th. The annual report submissions are due on January 10th.
Yes, it's on our, it's moving.
That's moving.
That's one Tom, when you ask me what Tom Lucy does for us, that's one of his annual helps, is the annual reports for both
Yes,
towns.
thank
So he's working on.
This Thursday night, as we know, is the January 9th Capitol hearing.
Yes, we will be there
We'll
presenting.
be there presenting. And then there was a little bit of a discussion on the carrying costs of Peabody, so I'm sure that will come up in the CPS meeting tonight. They just had a brief discussion about that. And they were very appreciative that the schools are hopefully coming in at guidelines. So that was another positive from the meeting last night. That's all I had on select board.
Okay.
That's great, thanks.
Brian, you want to cover?
Yeah, just very quickly for Carlisle, Carlisle FinCom is kicking off what they call their marathon budget meetings. They're tomorrow and Thursday. Originally, the review of the region budget, or the meeting about the region budget, was going to be tomorrow night, but because it's a Carlisle school committee night, and Julia and I need to be at that, they agreed to push it to their January 23rd meeting. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that the Carlisle discussion is happening in a couple more weeks, and not this week as we expected.
Great. Yes, thank you. And I'm happy it didn't get pushed to this Thursday because we were about to be doing a lot of moving around. Be there as well. Any other liaison updates from anyone? We have FinCom Concord this week. Okay.
Well, CPC, but that's on the agenda, so we have to hold that.
Yes. So I think from a discussion, if everyone's okay with it, I think I see John's here. I'd like to move item B up for the amenities building. As mentioned, we're going to be covering the budget. That's majority of what we're going to cover. One thing during the break that I did do was just kind of tracking what we had asked for. So we have CPC on our target. Alexa and I had a chance to talk to Burton Flint, made an ask to join their January 14th meeting to see if Concord would reopen the process. It would probably mean that if that were to happen, other groups would be as well. So we're still waiting to see if that's going to happen, but we are going to join the January 14th meeting in Concord. Brian, I know you're pursuing the Carlisle ones. We also, I reached out to Mary Hartman because I know there were DEI funds that were available in the town. Just because we know that there's one of the reasons we're trying to push for the amenities building is the ADA compliance concern. And she just let us know that the DEI is actually gonna be, the funds are gonna go to the DEI commission, which is great. But she also let me know that we're not gonna get any of the ARPA funds, or rec funds, so no funds coming that way. So with that being said, like I said, we did reach back out to CPC. We wanna make sure that we are leaving no stone unturned, when it comes to this, and the working group has done a great job. So one of the things that came out, like I said, we hear from the public a lot, was just about what was happened about 10 years ago when we opened the high school around CC at Play, to see if there were any fundraising opportunities to offset the taxpayer burden as we've been talking about. So did reach out to John Boyden and Drew McMorrow to see if they would join. So John's agreed to come. If you want to come up to the table. We wanted to just ask some questions to see, could we do something similar to what we did 10 years ago with CC at Play, if we could bring it back? So, John, do you have
It's nice to be back at this table. And I can't believe that was 10 years ago. Yes, so I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah.
And for those who are not as familiar with CC at Play, it was 10 years ago that we formed a nonprofit, 501c3, with the express purpose of raising money to renovate the outside athletic facilities of the high school. And that's what we did. We raised about $5 million. We built...
And I'm sorry, we don't have working mics tonight, so we're all going to have to speak up.
Okay, so I don't need to worry about this.
It's the people behind you that can't hear. It's the faces I'm watching try to lean in.
Yeah, sorry.
No, our nothing works.
You want to stand there?
I know.
Yes.
Stand and
I'll stand here and I'll speak loudly.
For those of us.
So CC at Play back in 2014 was formed to provide the funds and the project management to renovate all the exterior, all the outside athletic facilities at the high school. It took about 3 years from start to finish. We raised about $5 million. Roughly a third of that came from CPA funds. 2/3 came from private contributions. And we were able to rebuild 2 baseball fields, 2 softball fields. We built the 6 tennis courts in their present location. We built a new rectangular grass field up at the same altitude, same elevation as the Doug White fields. And we put in turf and kind of upgraded the memorial field. So it was a very successful project. When we started CC at Play, we imagined that it might stick around to serve as a conduit.
Oh, he's using the mic. Just hold that mic. It's not actually going to project, but people at home
They
will
can hear
hear.
it on the.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
We always imagined that it would be potentially useful to have the entity stick around to provide a source of like project management oversight, but also provide a vehicle for private fundraising to support future recreation-oriented projects. So in the years since that project was done, we've provided minor funding to CC Youth Baseball for some projects, to the other youth sports organizations in the tens of thousands of dollars. So we did that with some of the money we had left over. But the 501c3 does still exist. We have taken our board of 12. It's now, I believe there are 2 of us on the board, Drew, you mentioned, and myself. And basically, it's lying in wait to be put to use for a good project in the future. So the entity still exists, and if it could be useful here, we'd be happy to talk about how we could revive it, repopulate it with volunteers, and make it happen.
Awesome.
So I'm new to this process. Brian, I know, do we do anything like this when we did the Carlisle playground?
We did it, yes, to a certain degree, because the playground, all the fundraising was done through essentially through the PTO. And so, you know, it was the CPC funds went to the PTO, and yeah, it kind of helped with the bidding process as well, because it was the nonprofit that was running the charge. So I imagine it's similar.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if we use CPC funds, because hopefully we're still gonna go to both towns asking for that. How does that look like when we merge CPC funds with fundraising dollars?
Well, I can tell you what we did. So we did have public money in the form of CPC funds, and we had private money. The way we approached the project was the district gave a lease to CC at Play to come onto its property, make the agreed-upon improvements, and then essentially gift those improvements to the town, or to the district, and then the lease terminated, right? So in that way, the project was actually undertaken by a non-municipal entity, so we were not, hypothetically, we wouldn't be bound by the same bidding process or or prevailing wage requirements that a publicly pursued project would. So there are a couple benefits if you wanted to explore this. One would be, obviously, it provides a vehicle for citizens to make tax-deductible donations to a project, right? Secondly, there may be a cost savings if CC at Play were to manage the project, because it wouldn't necessarily have to conform to all the prevailing wage requirements. And my understanding, 10 years ago, that was a differential of like 30 to 40%. So that could represent a substantial cost savings overall.
I just have a very basic question. Is your board interested in partnering? If we were to ask CC at Play, are you interested in partnering with the district to do this project?
As I say, we have a very, very small board now.
Yes. So I'm
Just two of us.
I just have to put it out there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think the last project was super exhausting, so that board is ridden off into the sunset. I've talked to Drew about this when Julie reached out to me, just about structurally how might we approach this. And one way we might do it would be to keep a very small board, those of us who have the fiduciary responsibility for the nonprofit, but to recruit a subcommittee, essentially, who would have project responsibility for fundraising and oversight of the construction.
Yeah,
Alexa?
I have a couple questions. So, given that in your first go-around 10 years ago, you had about a third of the project CPC funded, would it be right, therefore, to assume that if we were to engage in a partnership with your organization, that you would want the order of operations to be such that we would get some sort of commitment from the CPC, and then your operation would be responsible for, I'm like writing it, I'm trying to visualize it. Your organization would be responsible for the delta in funds between what the CPC could provide and what the cost or bid might be? That's my sort of first question.
That would certainly be one way to approach it.
Okay.
I will tell you that when we did this 10 years ago, we didn't know exactly how much we might get from the CPC as a percentage of the overall project.
Okay.
We targeted 1/3, 2/3. That was kind of the number we laid out. In my experience with the CPC, they like to see substantial contribution from
Understood.
the partner,
Okay.
right? So I've seen instances where CPC has given 80%, sometimes 50%. So I think that would really be best. That's a conversation you got to have with the CPC.
Okay.
But in terms from a timing or sequencing standpoint, it may not be realistic to get a firm commitment from CPC before you actually start rolling, right?
My next question is, with respect, so Brian, Tracy, and I have done some various work with respect to not just the amenities building, but also sort of the larger view of completing the campus as we approach the 10-year mark. To that end, we have started to curate a list of potential people that, and by the way, we have vetted 0 of them, of people who might have some interest in putting their volunteer efforts towards that end, and whether that's financial or time, we don't know. We haven't, again, vetted any of this. Would you, if you were to do this, would you be looking to expand your organization beyond the 2 of you guys? Like, are you looking to create a volunteer corp, a larger board, a group? And would you want us to be helpful in that area, or?
Yeah, so the answer is most definitely yes. So I just want to be clear about kind of where we are today. We have essentially a dormant organization, right? Neither Drew nor I were thinking that we were going to suddenly get involved in the project in the schools these days, right? So I think we'd be looking to you to recruit a new set of volunteers who really are going to lead this project forward. Again, we have the vehicle for fundraising to achieve some of those other benefits, but this really will need to be led by current parents or other volunteers in the community.
Well, which then brings us to, we've talked about a potential track up at the high school, and we have said that that would be probably 100% fundraised, so at no cost to the taxpayer. So it would be a perfect vehicle to continue on, if you had new board members come on, the amenities building is project 1, and then the track is project 2, so they could just continue on with that.
I mean, I think this is maybe a good analog is the CEF, right? The CEF has been around for like 25, 30 years now. The board rotates, right? The
1994.
people who are doing all the work in the CEF are the folks who are invested in the schools today,
Yeah.
right? So I was a past president of the CEF. I love the organization, but I did my time there, right? So in the same way, perhaps CC at Play becomes something like the CEF that could be perpetuated to pursue project after project.
Right.
I have another question, just to keep complicating things. The Friends of CC Fields, which also, I didn't know that they were even an organization prior to this year when the Doug White turf began to fail. So do they have a role in the campus? Like, were you a part of that? Like, I'm just sort of curious as to how all these pieces or organizations might fit together, work together, et cetera. And I just don't have a familiarity, but apart from the fact that even the guy that was the head of CC Fields said, I didn't know I was the head of CC Fields. I signed up to be the head of CC Youth Soccer, and I guess these two positions are married.
Well, except for that, that's going to change in 2032 when the Doug White Fields come back to the district. So, I mean, I think that a lot's going to happen then.
Yeah. So the Friends of CC Playing Fields was formed specifically to build the Doug White Fields, right? Which they did. They also put in place a funding mechanism that would provide a long-term funding solution for replacement of the turf. At this point in time, my understanding is that they have, the only thing they do is they collect fees.
Yes.
They look after them, they make sure they're safe so they can fulfill their commitment to provide funding for replacement of the fields. But beyond that, they have no ambition to do anything additional.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, that doesn't work, but just talk.
I am not a fan of trying to put it, so CC at Play operated in a completely different way than we are operating right now. They worked with Gale Associates and not the district, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we're already the stakeholders. And I think trying to back this thing up and trying to, at this point, I think we would have to go out another year, is all I'm saying. If we wanted to change the whole structure and have CC at Play run this, lease the property to them, have them, we would have to, they would have to be the applicant to CPC, not us, not the, so I'm saying, it's, and I'm not sure that you're ready to fully commit to doing the amenities building tonight.
I don't know what the timing is. My understanding is that you guys have.
I think that would be our discussion, right?
Yeah.
Well, it would put it out.
No, I'm saying like, it would be our discussion to sort of decide, do we, to your point, like delay a year?
Right.
With the intention of partnering with CC, rebuilding and then partnering with CC at Play?
Correct.
Or would we pursue a warrant article, which maybe is like the next thing that's on the agenda this year in order to secure this preferred pricing from last year? I think that's our discussion, right?
Right, and they did not bring a warrant article outside of CPC funds to town meeting.
Correct.
Is there an opportunity for us to drive the process and for CC at Play to make a donation, to make a financial donation?
No.
It has to go, they have to own the process?
That's something we need to think through more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
That's
And
why we're
that would
here.
basically, that would be akin to someone stepping forward and saying, I want to contribute $1 million toward the construction of the building.
Yeah.
So that could certainly happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you have to give the time.
What you wouldn't have is you wouldn't have the potential for a cost savings. Right? So if what you're trying to do is to reduce the impact on taxpayers, the path you're on right now, the taxpayers are going to cover 100% of the cost unless you can get people to donate, which maybe you can, right? That would be great. But in terms of the construction costs, I think the simplest way to approach this, if you did say, how could we work together, would be for us to take your design, and I don't know if it's fully engineered. I know you have a preferred
They've got the
option.
schematic, they're doing the design right now.
Okay, so basically, one path forward might be, I think Cynthia has a good point about, yes, we would have, if you're getting CPC funds, I'm not sure about the answer to that question, but in terms of the construction itself and the timing, you would give us your preferred design, all the engineering, we would take it out, we would get pricing on it, right? We would find a contractor who's able to do it on schedule and at the kind of the quality level and the price we're looking for. And so I would imagine we put that out to a few different people, but it would be, that is a process that would be run by CCFLA.
So partnering with you, if I'm to summarize and understand, has potentially two perceived benefits to the taxpayer. One, the cost itself of the construction might be reduced because you don't have the same legal constraints that Bob would had were he to go out to bid. And two, the obvious one being the donations. And we would hope that CPC was a player in this as well. So then there would be
But.
no burden to the taxpayer ostensibly,
Right.
but
I was going to say, then there's no
guarantee.
warrant article for a capital project this year because I don't
Correct.
think a nonprofit could be putting that
Correct.
forward. So that's just.
That's the trade-off
Yeah.
that we have to, that ultimately I think is our decision to have.
I
or
think
to
even
make.
if we don't go this path for the amenities building, to your point, Tracy, we do want to consider this at least for the track and for other campus initiatives.
Totally. Yep.
And we could put a warrant article together and withdraw it.
That is true.
Say that again?
We could put a warrant article together and withdraw it if we go.
Yeah, that's exactly, we tried to give you the
That's what we
list
did
of
last
everything you
year.
have to put in before the deadline. You can always take it out.
Yeah.
You can't add it.
Right.
So,
Because we
Right.
did withdraw it last year. I
Yeah.
mean, we put
It would be for a
the
different
article.
reason,
Yeah.
but.
But yeah,
And I don't want to complicate or scare the CPC, but in the event that they entertained a donation to offset the warrant article, could they then those funds wouldn't be allocated till the previous year anyway, right?
They'd have to withdraw, it would be.
They'd have to
withdraw
we'd
because
have to reapply. Okay, or CC at Play would reapply.
we're withdrawing our
So we
article.
haven't applied for anything.
For anything. No, I know, but I'm saying, I think
no,
our
exactly.
intention
Agreed.
Yeah.
But
is,
no, but I'm saying we have this, I mean, to your point, Cynthia, like a sliver of a window.
yeah.
Still,
No, we would, so if we go the other route, we would have to start over with CPC.
but we don't, but that's what I guess that's what I'm asking. And we don't have to start anything over because we have nothing submitted.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying, but.
No, she's saying we can't, we wouldn't, if we were to pursue the path with John Boynton, we wouldn't apply for the
CC at Play,
CPC, or CC at Play, we wouldn't apply.
We wouldn't, but CC at Play.
Oh, yeah, right, but not this year, but not on the 14th.
Why not?
Because we would need to, we would need to submit that budget that is potentially less than our budget, right?
And, yeah, so, or TBD, or maybe in some,
You're saying the 14th of January?
Yeah.
yes.
No, but that's not, hold on a second. I just want to be clear.
I think we'd have a hard time
I wanna
mobilizing
be
for
clear,
that.
'cause I want
Exactly.
to make sure it's clear with what we agreed
5
to. but
days.
We have no guarantee that we.
no, it's,
Yeah,
We are literally going on January 14th to their meeting to ask
As a
them.
district.
grovel and beg.
No, as the district, but this is a public meeting, so people know what's going
No,
on.
no, but that's why I want to be clear, because it is a
Yeah.
public meeting, that there's no guarantee that CPC is going to open it up.
Of course.
To apply.
yeah, right.
So we might already
That is
have
true.
to wait a year
Oh,
for Concord.
good point.
So we don't know yet. Now, in Carlisle, it's different. We are in the process right now of.
Yeah, Carlisle deadline, the normal deadline for Carlisle is early February.
Right.
Wait, but if, to
Plenty
that
of time.
point, if we were to partner with CC at Play, and we've already secured the Carlisle CPC funding, would we then withdraw our application and start the process over in Carlisle? And that would push us back a year as well, right? Because your process is earlier than ours.
Okay, Brian, because he's done this before in Carlisle.
But when we did it in Carlisle before, we just submitted it as
The school
playground committee, which
Oh, the
is-
playground committee.
Yeah, the school committee did not submit it in that.
But now we are. It is the school committee that's submitting it to Carlisle.
As of right
Currently.
now.
Right.
You don't have anyone else to do it.
No, I know. I know. It's, and
Yeah.
that
But yes, we become the applicant, yes.
Yeah.
I'll take it away and kind of ask what that would even look like. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, we have a few weeks
Yeah.
on the Carlisle side.
Sure. Go ahead.
So just a quick couple things to think about. You should definitely check with legal counsel. on what's
Yes,
permissible
I
and
was going to
what's not.
say that.
I've worked in the private sector. I can't stand some of the rules we have to comply with, so I get that. There are, what was done before, it's kind of borderline, but if the legal counsel blesses it, you have support from legal counsel. The savings, the extra money savings is just on the labor. The supplies and materials should cost the same. There's definitely going to be a cost difference using prevailing wages. And then there's just a question of so if we're not the ones running the project, are we responsible for making sure that people are qualified to do it? Like what if there's some type of safety issue? So there's things to think about. I'm not sure I'm saying it's insurmountable, but I would
completely
cross
right.
those eyes before. So we say we're comfortable with what we're doing, we'll work, it's safe. We have legal counsel saying, yes, you can do it.
We had a pretty extensive agreement and lease.
Yeah.
Region and-
So maybe we resuscitate that.
I forget if there was some kind of indemnification for any.
Yeah.
It's on our website. The agreements are all on there, yeah.
So I guess the question is, for now, I mean, this is, the purpose of tonight was to have a discussion and make no formal decisions, but I guess the question would be, given the timing, Concord would be, well, we already know it's difficult because we don't know if it's going to even open for us to be considered because the window somewhat passed. But we saw this window in Carlisle, so do we want to make, again, it's this wide. But do we want to consider having a more active discussion at next 2 weeks from now meeting, the 21st, about it so that if we wanted to make a more formal decision on this, that we could apply for CPC funds under CC at Play? And then wait, to your point, Cynthia, that maybe it has to wait, but the reason I'd say that is we don't have to wait
In Carlisle.
for Carlisle. It's like, 'cause CPC, it's like the one time the benefit of CPC being early in Concord, we would know next year in the fall, and you could actually start the project with a private entity that could move it faster. And it might actually be, the timing might be actually similar to if we did it through the public route,
Right.
in terms of breaking ground and finishing a project.
I think that's exactly the discussion we want to have.
Yeah.
In the meantime, is it possible to continue conversations with John, you, and to try to resurrect CC at Play and use some of the people that, you all have started this list of potential, and I'm happy to add some people to that too. Because it seems like even if this doesn't become the right path, or however the committee moves forward on that, the track would greatly benefit from.
100%.
Yeah, so I feel like if you're amenable to those conversations, I don't know why we would delay on that.
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so we could put this on the topic for the 21st, for 2 weeks from now's meeting. Maybe the ask would be that the working group, so Brian, Tracy, and Alexa
So
would be.
can I just say, I think we're treading pretty heavily on open meeting law to do this kind of thing. Working group, to me, is just sort of bantering around some ideas, but we're really discussing formalizing a financial relationship with an outside entity. I really think it should be some kind of a subcommittee or
Sure.
whatever you want to call it, because
We can do
Just
that. I was
post the
in-
meeting, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. I was gonna say I think that's a fine thing, just to complete it though, and I think in parallel, Carrie and I can reach out to legal counsel, I think to Bob's point, and get some guidance on that. So I take feedback on that. I mean,
Great.
if we want to do something more formalized and more public, that is absolutely fine. I just want to make sure that we don't miss this timeframe.
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think it's just going to be a much better process to make it a public conversation, so it doesn't,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
I think it goes beyond working group because, yeah.
Okay.
That would mean you really should vote to form a subcommittee tonight and
yeah.
name who's going to be on it, and then from here on, post the meetings.
Great, perfect.
Okay,
Can I make a motion?
You want to do it?
We can do that. Pursuant to Cynthia's statement, I move that the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee form a campus completion subcommittee comprised of Alexa Anderson, Tracy Morano, and Brian Watterson.
Second.
Discussion?
You need a chair so they can talk to me and Aaron about when to post your meetings. So somebody has to take point.
At our next meeting, we'll elect our chair.
All right, as long as one of you has to communicate so we can post the first meeting with an agenda.
It's our first agenda item.
Perfect.
And I think in the next meeting, we should.
But we need an
put
agenda to
together a
post.
charge.
Yeah. Agreed.
This could be a good placeholder for now.
Yeah. Cool. No, and I know we're laughing because it's moving fast, but I
I
think
felt
it's
like we should have been doing this all along, honestly.
Okay.
Because it's
Well, we
just,
got it.
yeah.
We have been doing a lot of bantering, I will say that. It wasn't really, there's nothing formal that's really come out of it. We've been throwing around ideas to get to this point, I think.
That,
But now we are.
when we
Here
began
are.
this
Now here
discussion,
we
I
are.
thought, there's a lot
Yeah, this is rich. No, it's
great. Yeah, it's good.
foundational work that needs to happen.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then John, you'll have a formalized policy group to work with, and then, as you said, like, once we form the subcommittee.
Yep.
Outside of the subcommittee, the actual, I think we'll be able to have a more robust dialogue and figure out the.
I think that all sounds good, because there's a lot of parameters here that need to be talked through, right?
Sure.
A lot of
Very much
options,
so, and
right? So, for
I
sure.
honestly think you need to keep at least Bob close,
yeah.
because there's definitely a lot of parameters. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Actually vote.
Thank you,
on
John.
the motion?
No,
Yeah,
Yes,
you
that
need
was
to.
just-
you and your rules.
Okay.
Okay, the vote.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Wonderful.
Welcome to the subcommittee, guys.
It's good.
It's a big pay, a lot of pay.
Thanks,
No, I mean, I
John.
think, like I said, and John, thank you for coming. I think the biggest piece that we wanted to figure out, like, we made a commitment that we were gonna pursue every avenue to lower the taxpayer burden, so whatever we can do. I don't think at the end of this,
Thank
we're gonna
you.
say we've exhausted everything, so I appreciate the partnership.
Definitely.
If it does go that way, for the committee. Okay, so I moved that, and I'm actually glad we had that conversation, but I'll turn it back to Bob and Dr. Hunter to go through the superintendent's recommended budget.
Okay, and unfortunately, you'll have to do it on your laptops to look at the screen, so
Oh, yeah.
sorry for that. So in terms of the regional budget, and this will apply to both budgets, so I'll just do a little preamble before Bob starts.
Promote me, too. Somebody has to promote me.
I tried earlier and you declined, so then you must have hit the button by mistake. Okay. So, the budgets we bring you aren't just the work, you're either going to be hot or cold, I have nothing else for you
We know.
tonight.
Come prepared.
Coffee and water.
The budgets we bring to you are not the work of just Bob and I by any stretch. We really ask a lot of our administrative team and department chairs to dive very deeply into their budgets and start from really the ground up. And we met with the administrators earlier today and really had to name, I think this might be the most robust approach I've seen them take, where they came to the table with trade-offs and not just asks. We've always zero-based it, but often that, we start from behind, and we have to keep saying that. The guidelines typically don't cover the contractual raises in either of the large teacher-based budgets. So we're looking for savings from the minute we start. And really kudos to the team that they came in with a lens of, I'm not going to just bring asks, I'm going to come in with what I can give up or has faded away or whatever it is, whatever way they came to the savings. We just had a really strong bunch of sessions with really leaders who took the zero-based really, really seriously this year. So I think that served us very well, because as we compiled the budget, we came in with reasonable numbers right from the start, which is just not normal. So usually the budget's, well above guideline, and then Bob and I bring them through again and make our way to what what we can do best and still service children. And this time, I think a lot of that work was done at the building and department level, which was great. So that said, and Bob will go through this obviously in more detail, we aren't coming into either budget without potential rifts. To really zero base and look at where you are in time, place, and situation requires that sometimes you don't need everything you already have. And based on enrollments and some other moving pieces, that's not unexpected, right? In fact, it's very expected by FinCom. For us, there's a lot of nuance to how we get to that. And I think as we talk on the regional budget, it's especially nuanced at a high school with, we don't just lay off a full-time person generally. Everything's in 0.25 of a person, which means it's hard to find a person to riff. And so it's just more complicated, and there's a lot of moving pieces. So that said, and I think there's some definite discussions to have at the end of the conversation where we have, we've met the guideline number in there. The assessments follow the budget, and the assessments, how does that play into the guideline number is the question, because Concord has a slight shift in enrollment, slight being, 60-some thousand. But if we're trying to meet the guideline, again, this is small money, so we're going to be able to figure it out. But that's some nuance we're still going to have to talk through, is how do the assessments play in. I think in history, it's been very long-standing. Carlisle never, ever balks at the assessment, and to very big numbers, a couple of years, where they just accept the kids are in the seats. And that's not an operational increase, that's just a fixed cost. Concord's been a lot more mixed about how they respond to the assessment changes. And I actually think it's an exercise to have a conversation now, because you've got one apartment complex coming online in Concord in 2 years, and another one fairly shortly after that, and then I'm seeing Concord. So the next 5 years is pretty clear to me that Concord's going to be the swing in the assessment discussion. So it's probably worth having the conversation now, even on small dollars, that we're going to give you a way to fix if they don't want to address it. But.
So that everyone understands, public and us, when, let's say, the guideline is set at 3.5%, and you show an operational increase of 3.5%, but, so that's first.
Right.
I always understood that to be, we have met the guideline. But what happened, and it happened last year in particular, then that operational increase of 3.5%, when it gets allocated to Concord or Carlisle, if there is an enrollment shift from Carlisle with it to Concord, and the share of Concord's budget from the previous year increases 3.6%. What you're saying is the Concord Finance Committee has historically then said, even though your overall operational increase met our guideline, you have not met the guideline because our increase.
It's been a very,
is that what you're saying?
That is, and it's been a different conversation with each FinCom depending on the.
But I'm saying in the past
there's been some times that
has been, okay.
So we'll let Bob talk you through all of it. There's a lot of information here. We really, I think, wanted this to be just a session to take it all in. You've got 2 more meetings before you have to vote anything. We also want it to be an opportunity this year. There's some relief in that the numbers are fairly already agreed upon. Let's talk about what the budget does for us. It's not just about the numbers. The why is so important, to the point that I put together a very lengthy document to try to do some background telling of where those numbers go and what they mean. I've been asked over the years to talk more on what never made it to the budget, because I usually just manage that and don't make a thing, because I'm not trying to advocate for it, so I don't want misperceptions. But I did do a little bit more of that this year. I'm like, yeah, the not funded this year is, and sort of named a few things along the way, more because I'm queuing you up for next year than anything else.
Well, and I also think, too, there's a perception that that is not part of your process.
Yes, that is very much a part of it.
And I think that perception, especially, I think, by the people, the invested stakeholders whose job it is to work with us. So I'm actually grateful for that. I think that's really important.
So I think the storytelling will include riffs, It's going to include things we didn't put in, and it's only some of them. I didn't mention all of them, but some of them. And then the whys behind it, and then how the numbers all come together for that. In good news, both budgets bring what we feel is, level service is a hard word to define because level looks different year to year sometimes, but really solid programming to children and meeting all the goals that we've set as a community. So that's pretty exciting to be saying. I've never built a budget where I had agreed upon numbers to back into that were doable and reasonable. So that's been a really interesting process over the last 2 weeks because we agreed kind of ad hoc suddenly on December 19th. Well, we were getting ready to go on vacation and kind of settled what we were going to aim for. So we've spent the last 2 weeks taking where we were and making it, all come together to those numbers. And that's been a very interesting new way of approaching things.
And I think you've implied this, but I don't know if you've explicitly said it, that both budgets will be at guideline.
Both budgets are at guideline.
Which is.
Yeah, and really kudos to the FinCom because you would be having a very different if they had left special ed out of district tuitions at the region in guideline, you would be having a completely different conversation with us. That $400,000 plus would be competing against everything else. So much gratitude to FinCom's thinking outside of the box and trying something new and different that they have not done before. So, all right, I'm gonna let Bob get into all of it.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm going to jump through my slides here for those who can see them on screen. Just a high-level overview of the process. This is where we are now. We, develop zero-based budgets with the principals, administrators. We start that earlier in the fall. At the same time, guidelines are developed by the town of Concord and with Carlisle. This year, Carlisle endorsed the guideline established by Concord. We are now at the stage where we're presenting our preliminary budget, and the open hearing will happen in February. And then we have the ongoing feedback loop. We are expecting to get information on state aid in mid to late January, which is helpful. We use estimates for revenues at this point. I don't necessarily anticipate them changing much, but certainly helpful to have the actual numbers the state is approving and know what they are. Per pupil expenditures is something we have been asked to share each year. So I have the most recent data from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. You can see that Concord-Carslisle is third amongst our peer districts. These are affluent districts in the area that we traditionally benchmark with. And we won't talk about Concord now, we'll talk about during that presentation, but we're third out of the peer group, which is the same as last year for Concord-Carslisle. Our budget objectives are to maintain existing programs and supports to students. We call that a level service budget. Support strategic plan initiatives. So looking at our plan, identifying items that we want to incorporate. Not all of those initiatives cost money, some of them do. Meeting legal mandates for special education, homelessness, and other requirements. And then balancing school and student needs with fiscal capacities of our 2-member towns. Some of the planning assumptions we made just to, as we go into the budget, to keep in mind is that we're making level service budgets while meeting legal mandates. Homeless transportation costs are not budgeted. We will be reimbursed for this money on a lag basis the following year. So in essence, we get paid back later. It does create some budget pressure, but it ends up providing relief in the following year.
Is that 100% reimbursement?
It's close. It's not quite 100%. I think it was like 90% last year. The hope was, and the promise was it was going to be 100, but it's not quite. Okay. It's close, though. And it's a lot higher than it used to be. We also anticipate.
Sorry. Getting there.
We also anticipate the state. Where's that coming from?
Me.
Oh, okay.
If
You just have to mute. That's
mute
it.
it on your volume.
Turn the volume down.
I'm out.
We also anticipate the state phasing out the Concord homeless shelter over the next 18 months, and grant funding remaining available during that time to offset costs and help us support the students attending CCHS.
So there's been no change to that grant funding right now? It's been a minimal change?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but technically, the grant funding expired in 12/31. It's going to be we're expecting, I had a little bit more detail in the CPS presentation because it's a lot bigger number there.
Right.
But we're expecting it to be continued.
Continued, okay.
Yep.
All right.
How many students do we have at the high school?
4.
Right. It's
It's a little bit more now. Let me pull it up.
It's fluid, too.
No, I know, but it's much small compared to the
Yeah, 1,
schools.
What did you ask? How many,
2,
how many what?
3,
How many students?
Students at the shelter.
Oh, right, yes.
5, 6,
On the shelter.
7,
Attending?
7. And we transport some others.
Yep.
7 in the schools and transport additional children.
20 open rooms.
22 open rooms.
Hopefully clean and in good condition now. So the overall summary here is shown. Our total is 3.86%, factoring in everything. We're going to go through these on the following slides, but just a couple things. I'll comment on other school services, but the big drivers, the out-of-district tuitions, most of that is private special ed tuitions. It also includes charter school tuitions, school choice, and we have an assessment we get for students at state hospitals or state institutions. That's another piece. So most of the 531 is 462,000 of that is out-of-district special ed tuitions. Debt service is down. So we're going to go through these, but if you take out the out-of-district tuitions, that's a large chunk of the increase. We're at about 2.5%. So again, that's driving the big picture number. You can also see that by that being excluded, that's about how much we'd have to cut to reach guideline, and that would be pretty painful. So again, I just echo what Dr. Hunter said. We are very appreciative, and we know and we've acknowledged, we heard them, this is a one-time thing. This is an exceptional situation, the increase we're having. It's not the norm. So in district administration category, we've had some software costs up. It's overall it's up 4.2%, just a little bit above inflationary increase. It's being driven by software costs. We migrated after the cybersecurity incident last year. How long ago was that now?
May.
May. Feels like it was a long time ago.
We're still slightly traumatized.
We migrated our accounting software to a cloud-based product to enhance cybersecurity, and also it's operationally more efficient. It can be supported by a group in Arizona, and if we have a problem, we have backup. It's just a lot more efficient and a better model for us. So that's driving a little bit of an increase for accounting software. Panorama, we had paid for with grant funds opportunistically, and we knew that was going to expire and it was going to have to roll into the budget. It's rolling into the budget this year. We've added a subscription for Google Education Plus, which provides a lot more robust tools than the core Google product.
That's Google Classroom now enhanced, and things like syncing up with Aspen actually occur, and some really great things.
And then some of our core subscriptions, we do have, I would say, slightly above inflationary increases. We do have pressures, things like Mosel, which is an Apple device managing tool. So we're working with vendors to try to do the best we can to slow those price increases down. On the salary side,
Can we capitalize some of those softwares as subscription or no?
in our financial statements, but not budget-wise. We can't capitalize.
Right.
Yeah. If I was in the private sector, I might be able to pull that off, but not here. The administrative salaries is increasing 26%, and it's mostly because we have an instructional technologist that's retiring, and there's some savings we anticipate on the replacement hire. That person's very experienced and high on the salary scale, so that will offset some of the COLA increases. For teaching and instruction, we're up 2.5%, which is actually in a better place than we typically are in the teaching instructional area because of the steps, lanes, and COLA increases. Our salaries are up 2.1%. There's a reduction in 0.92 FTEs, and that's, like Dr. Hunter mentioned, it's like a quarter here. We have one person that's a little bit less than a quarter. It's half of a quarter. But across different subjects, it's a net reduction of 0.92 FTE. Part of what's also helping this is that we have a Pathway Special Education program that has had 2 students tuitioning in from other towns, and now we have 3, and so that $45,000 is an offset to the teacher salaries that will help. And then we do have some savings on replacement hires and some retirements, as well with above, that kind of offsets the COLA and step and lane increases. So this is not the norm. 2.1% for CCATA salaries is great from our perspective and better than where we typically are. For supplies and materials, our increase is basically fairly modest, except that we've added one item that we think is important. We've added $90,000 to the technology budget to begin replacing interactive boards. And talking to our school principals and school technology director, the boards that are there they've been there since the building opened. Some of them are failing. It's also not the technology we want to use. We want to go to
Interactive screens.
yeah, that they can work with, different than the ones we have now. The price of the units is similar, but we have a lot of boards in the building. 90,000 would probably allow us to do the 4th floor, and then we probably would need to do maybe a little bit more than 90 the next 2 years to do the 3rd floor and the 2nd floor.
Yeah, this was a big discussion for us, that as we brought people through the zero-based, it wasn't necessarily the top priority on our list, but as the zero-based and the budget process panned out and we started listening to the administrators, and then you go, of course, then you go look and you're like, oh, they're right, it's terrible. K-5 and the high school, like, we've got to start chipping away at the massive replacement things that need to happen. So I'm really.
That's what happens when you put buildings off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
10 years
somebody
later.
10 years from now will say the same thing about the middle school.
Yeah, you need what's the cost per unit of the new?
About 3,000-ish.
Yeah.
A little bit, like it might have gone up a little bit, but not, it's less than 4,000.
It's just a short throw with,
No, we're looking at screens that are the portable screens, the interactive portable screens. Like
Clear Touch.
Yes, like we have at the
We
middle
have them.
school. Yeah.
And I was a no-no on them.
Oh,
Like and then, now I'm a big supporter.
Yeah. Oh, great. I should wait for the punchline. That's great.
Once you actually use them,
Yeah.
because we're a Mac, like this,
Yeah, yeah.
they're more like Windows-centric and Google-centric, and they're not really a Mac appliance. So it's like, oh, we've got all this Mac
Yeah,
infrastructure. But the teachers love them.
That's great.
And they are much more flexible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Excellent. So we're about to have a whole middle school full of them. So we'll be very quickly sharing our thoughts. But.
I'm one of the 2 non-Macs here, I see.
It's always hard to convert the business
Maybe Julie.
office.
Major.
3.
They go down fighting.
We did Excel on a Mac.
And then non-teacher salaries is down by 1/4 of an FTE. So it's up 54,000 or 1.8%. But so all in all, again, teaching instructional support is up 2.5 or 522,000.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. When you see reductions there, those aren't just naturally all happening. Some of them are, but not all. So there may be some folks who get hard news here as the next couple of months come by.
How does severance work in the budget? Is that an operational expense or?
It would actually be unemployment.
Unemployment's
We
all
wouldn't
it
have
is.
severance, and CPS would be paid by the town.
Yeah, okay.
Here, we do have a modest budget for it. Sometimes it's retirement. In this case, I'm fairly certain I know that this person got certified and is doing something. They were part professional, part tutor, and I think they gave up the tutor portion of their job, which was a small portion of it.
Okay.
So I don't think this, I think this was,
Anyway,
yeah.
what we don't want to do tonight, and I know you already know this, but I'm going to say it for the community, we're not disclosing which positions are being impacted.
You can't.
Partly because things are still moving. We got it close enough. We could put numbers in front of you and continue our discussions. And partly because we need to respect that these are people's jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Other school services is up 9.1%, 311,000. 122,000 of that's due to an increase in special ed transportation costs. There's 2 components to that. There's parent reimbursements that are up slightly for transporting their children to out-of-district placements. We also have an assessment that we get from Case Collaborative that does our transportation in general, both in-district and out-of-district. In the past, they've had significant surpluses that have helped to lower the assessment. Those surpluses are declining, and so I haven't budgeted a surplus offset this year. So there's a little bit of an adjustment this year from not having the surplus.
And are all those private transportation, I mean, those costs have just skyrocketed over the past.
Yeah, there's been a
2 or 3 years,
market
right? I mean,
available to them to create a void. There was a void there
and
because
they
we
can
couldn't
charge people
find.
whatever they want.
And Bob's pretty relentless on finding the one with the best, because the homeless kids are all on other providers. So we've found
A couple of companies.
yeah.
We call, we're supposed to ask for 3 quotes, so we found some companies, and we tend to follow up with those companies. And, but yeah, the rates are all over the place. We had one quote of like $500 for a day. That's 180 school days. That's what, $90,000. So we have searched, and there's one as low as $92 a day. We pay half of it, but so it is a challenge, particularly with the homeless transportation, which we need to arrange quickly. Usually we have some idea.
Case doesn't do homeless. They've done a little if we've already got a run with an open seat, but that's about it, so.
But with the special education transportation costs, I know when we went and met with FinCom about them kind of helping us with the guideline on that, we know that the state has not come through on their commitment.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
One of the things that Brian and I have asked Carlisle is to maybe come together with you so we can collectively make an ask to the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we revisit that to try to lessen this.
That could be all school committees, honestly. Like,
Correct.
it really is more than just the 2 towns.
Yeah, so if we could, exactly, and that was the other conversation, so if we could, do you need help, can we help in any way with bringing that together and making a formal ask to either?
So Julie, have you talked to MASC? I think that they've advocated for this very strongly in their annual meetings, and in fact have bills on the table, so you should probably.
Today, or if they have bills on the table today, because I haven't inquired outside of that, but I will definitely reach out to Alicia.
And there might be a standard letter that we could.
Yeah, I think this one's been a lobbying topic for years now.
Sure.
So
I mean,
just keeping the pressure
that's our house.
on them.
I mean, nothing comes out of those committees.
No, agreed.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, this directly gets, as part of the circuit breaker reimbursement, and they're not funding the transportation piece to the extent they said they would.
Correct.
This budget, I'll keep going through what it includes first, then what it doesn't. It includes an increase for the athletic coaches. Our old contract, which thankfully has been changed in our collective bargaining, had this benchmarking process that we did every 3 years. Very complicated, but regardless, what it results in is every 3 years you get kind of a significant bump because you haven't adjusted the coaching prices, and then you're catching up 3 years later for 3 years of increases when you benchmark. So we have a 9% increase in coaches' salaries through our benchmarking. Going forward, our coaching salary increases will be tied to COLA. So whatever the teacher's contract has.
There won't be that big bump.
Yep.
Which will be better.
So we do have that this year, this adjustment, and going forward, it'll be a smaller increase. We've added an assistant athletic director. We've done some looking at other athletic departments and what their staffing is, and this is something that, particularly with all the weekend activity that the high school has, both in district and out of district, and needing to have an administrator on site for events, felt like this was
It's just not
a need.
doable. Aaron's burning out, so we need to get some backup. So there's some creativity in how we got that in there without really adding to the budget and looking at, because he has an admin assistant now. So we sort of, anyway, it doesn't matter the behind the scenes, but we got creative in how we got it in. So it's not a huge increase to you, but it's a very much needed position.
Well, you've brought increase of different teams, and they do really try and be inclusive of, it's not as though you just have a freshman, a JV, and a varsity. I mean, there's JVA, JV, like you have 4 teams instead of 3, so it's just all of those games.
And really, the shortage of officials is driving it to a 7-day-a-week activity when that was not the case years ago, when they could staff it all Monday through Friday.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And regular ed transportation has a relatively modest increase of 2.4%, 23,000. And a piece of that is like sometimes we have to contract service for some of the trips for athletics in the afternoon because of the timing of our schools closing, and a lot of the vendors aren't able to do that, so our transportation director's gotten creative in trying to find ways to fill that, but we've had to cut back on our contracted service budget just because we can't find vendors that can fill our needs. What's not budgeted in here is homeless transportation, and that's about $69,000 that we're projecting for this year. Next year remains to be seen. The requirements related to how long they're allowing people to stay in the shelter is shortening, so, we don't know, but.
We're learning the
Yeah.
headlines as you are, and then I make some phone calls to see what's real. So, we'll see.
Okay.
For maintenance and operations, we're up 4.7 over budget. The big driver there, the biggest driver is we have some additional cyber threat detection services and support, again, related to the cyber incident. The CCRSD share of that's $29,000. Our heating costs are going up 11%. We had a 30 or 36-month contract for gas supply, and that came up, so 3 years later, you're going to have some price increases. But we've again locked in for a longer time period, so we don't have that increase next year. Water and sewers up 12,000. We have an estimate we received from DPW on what the stormwater assessment would be. This is a new assessment that is being rolled out. They estimate that we could be available for a credit of up to 50%, and they estimated a cost of 24. So I budgeted 12, hoping that we get the credit.
That's a good question. This might be like real dumb. Preface it with that. When we pay our bills, and this is more even probably a CPS question, but I'll ask it here, to CMLP or the town of Concord for water and sewer, is one way to look at that like just a transfer of funds between one
Yes.
town department to another? So I wonder too, given how iterative the conversations were with the finance committee, and given that sort of the natural resources sector is kind of volatile as it is, and I think about too the middle school with the electric coming on with all electric, is there like a worthwhile discussion to be had to even like, and I know these are small numbers, like taking this out of the guideline too, because our deficit is to their benefit almost, like, you know what I mean?
They're enterprises, so they're not a town department per se. So
Right.
they're trying to make money.
No, I get that, but.
So, no. Because it would be like saying we take the gas out of the, I mean, it wouldn't make sense. It's just the same as we're paying to a third-party gas company. We're lucky, very lucky, in many ways to
sure.
have CMLP.
Oh,
So
goodness, I
taking it
don't
out of the
disagree.
guideline would be like saying that, when do we stop taking a vendor out of the guideline? Like, yeah. I mean,
I see why you ask, and I think really at the region, the discussion first is getting apples to apples on what's in guideline, because you're going to see costs coming up here on health benefits and workers' comp and OPEB, which are out of guideline for the town and not for us. And this year, does it matter? I don't think it really matters. If we're able to get a reasonable number and work together to collaborate, it doesn't really matter what was in or out, as long as we all got to the same place. But
Right. Yeah, we did start those discussions.
Yeah, there's probably more to talk about there.
Yeah, and I think for the stormwater, it's,
I'm happy for the clarification, I just was trying to intellectualize it.
Yeah, it was a good question.
this is new too, so like, we have the impact this year. Once it's in the number, it's going to be a similar amount every year. It's not going to matter
No,
as
no, I
much.
get it. Okay.
So that's the heating. And then the rest of this is contractual wage increases. Again, so overall, it's 4.7%. Some of these key drivers are one-time things causing them to be an increase this year. For fixed charges, this includes benefits. This is, to the question earlier, this is where we would budget unemployment. Our insurance is going up 6.1%. The rate increase is actually higher than that, but our participation levels, we anticipated when we switched to Maya that there would be a little bit more of a participation increase. We've also had some retirements, and some of the replacement hires did not enroll. So net, this is 6.1, but the rate increase that's factored in here is 8%. The property and liability insurance is going up $42,000 based on our actuals from last year, projecting a slight inflationary increase. And then I've added in rental costs for the lease of the launch rental space. That's the yearly rental cost. And then these are offset by Social Security tax, which we are no longer required to contribute to. Instead, the employees who have contributed to this in the past, they have a OBRA retirement option, which is common for most municipalities. We were one of the few that had this. The town eliminated it last year as well, and we followed their lead. And then the retirement assessment from Concord, they are near fully funded. Our assessments come down 31%. And so it's nice that we're getting some relief as they get closer to fully funded status. Fixed assets is a reduction essentially because we budgeted a one-time item in FY25 that we don't need to budget in FY26 for computer lab hardware replacement. So that's down $25,000 or 6.5% versus the 25 budget. Debt service is down 3% or $118,000. The things to highlight here are that the access road bond anticipation note, we added it in FY25. Our first payments are now coming through where we're paying interest and a small principal repayment in FY26. We also have a ban for landfill remediation from several years ago, prior to my time here. And as of FY26, so that'll be fully paid down. And then our existing bonds are all level principal declining interest. So that means, over time, as the principal's paid down, we'll be paying less interest. So that's why our debt service is declining and is anticipated to continue to decline. Out-of-district tuitions increased $532,000. You can see I've broken out here the gross increase for tuitions for private schools and collaboratives has increased $462,000, approximately 13%. And the budget offsets for circuit breaker and IDA grant are flat. The state assessments for charter schools, school choice, and other organizations, would include state hospitals, increased by $69,000. When we compare it to guideline, we're not factoring in this bottom part. We didn't think that the FinCom was considering this to be part of the equation. So you'll see the math later does not include that. It just includes the 462 being backed out. And again, so this is the key driver in our budget increase this year. This is just a high-level view of the budget from a salary, non-salary perspective, and the non-salary piece, again, is driven primarily by out-of-district tuitions. On the homeless front, the estimated FY25 grant funding, actually that might end up being higher than $72,000, but that was a conservative estimate. We're extending and expecting an extension of the grant, like I mentioned earlier, beyond December 31st. We're just waiting for that to be confirmed. We have less costs committed to the homeless grant in this district. The transportation costs are projected to increase over last year. We're projecting $69,000. These are unbudgeted. In essence, we have to find a way to offset this or draw down some revolving funds and then pay them back once we get the reimbursement the following year. Update on our OPEB trust. At the end of June 30, you can see we are now 60% funded. I think we reported 52 or 54% last year. And our budgeted contribution is currently $425,000. That's fantastic. We're probably in the top 3% of districts across the state. Our revenue budget is relatively flat. You can see overall up 2.3%. Chapter 70 is relatively flat. We actually, in 25, the actual number ended up being slightly less than what we budgeted, and so that's partly why we're only at 2.1%. The only kind of one that jumps here is the charter reimbursement. When you have an increase in charter tuitions, the state reimburses you, gives you a reimbursement in the first year that occurs for budget relief. So I budgeted for that to occur in FY '26.
Just before you go on, those of you who are new, this is where the region really starts to differ in that CPS, the revenue goes to the town, so we're not monitoring, we monitor that certainly to see what state aid levels are like, but it's not a direct piece for us to account for. So, but in the region, we have to. So it's Chapter 70, which is state aid. Chapter 71 is transportation reimbursement. Regional districts get significant reimbursement for being regional. It's meant to be an incentive to regionalize. And then our excess and deficiency account is essentially our free cash. We do pull from excess and deficiency every year. When I got here, we were pulling almost 700,000 from there, and that was obviously really unhealthy. We've got it down to 3, and really it's maintained that for probably 5 years now because we've been able to replenish that and get back to the almost 5% because of the way things have fallen out with the budgets. Because you can't go over 5% of your operating budget in E&D. So it's a decent number. Ideally, would you want to be at 0 and not really drawing on E&D because it sort of sets you up to have to know you could run out of E&D at some point if you're not replenishing. But we haven't had that issue, so we haven't really tackled it. And frankly, if you did change this, some years you would have been over the 5%. And so that's just some of the background piece.
This kind of walks you through how you get from the expenditure budget of $40,479,000 down to the assessments of the towns. So, from at the top, $40,479,000, we're backing out all of the revenues we receive and the utilization of E&D to arrive at an assessment to the towns of $35.6 million. We then divide that out to the 2 towns based on the relative student enrollment on October 1. So it's 76.63% for Concord and 23.37% for Carlisle. It's about a 0.2% increase for Concord and decrease for Carlisle, percentage-wise. And I think the following slide, I'll show the student counts. So I'll move on to the next slide. This is when we, talk about comparing to guideline. Typically, the comparison is without debt. And certainly that's what Concord FinCom has endorsed, is without debt. But I show both here so that you can see what the actual impact is in terms of what you're getting assessed at the bottom. And then if you back out the debt, because the debt service is declining, it tends to pull it down a little bit. It's 5.29 for Concord, 4.06 for Carlisle. Here's the change in students. Both are decreasing slightly. It's relatively stable, but that equates to about a $75,000 impact or shift. So this is where we wanted to compare to what the FinCom posted. The Concord FinCom posted a number of $23,957,154, which is partway down there, and Carlisle later endorsed the FinCom guideline, and I never saw it published, but I calculated it the same way I calculated Concord's. And so what I've done is I've walked through what our assessment is with debt. I've backed out debt service to show what our assessments are without debt. Then, as was agreed, the guideline was 3.48% with an one-time exclusion for the impact of the out-of-district tuition increase. So I've then backed out each district's relative share of that, $107,000 for Carlisle and $354 for Concord, to arrive at an assessment that does not include debt or out-of-district. And you can see that those compare across both towns. We're under by about 3,000, but because of the enrollment shift, we're under guideline, under this calculation by 66,000 in Carlisle and over in Concord by 63,000.
So for the out-of-district tuition, I know we started to do Carlisle enrolling to Concord. Do you envision if we could refer like a special education, if we were to start to to look into that in more detail after we have this one kind of chance to do it. We talked about it in Carlisle, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Can you reframe the question?
I lost you too.
Do we envision if we could start to have, I mean, I can just speak for myself, I don't want to speak for you, Brian, but I know, especially with the middle school coming online and this great space you have for special education and just the number of programs that you have, just because you're a larger district in pure Concord.
Yep.
Do we envision that this number, like realistically, do we see this coming down if Carlisle were to start to work closer with Concord at a K through 8
I think
level?
that's a CPS question.
It would be a CPS.
So it won't impact this, but.
But it will in.
But in the future,
But it will, that's what I mean.
Well,
If we were to
yes,
transition
of course. If,
From
it's
a trend.
very likely if Carlisle starts to place students in the K-8 programs in Concord, the high school out-of-district number is going
That's
to
what I mean.
reduce. Yes, agreed.
Because I think what
Yeah.
again, and Brian, I want to give you a chance to speak to, I think what we would love to do is just have, you did such a great job of starting that conversation, and I think for us, as, because we sit on two school
Sure.
committees,
Yeah.
I think us bringing it up as we close out this year, but even as we go into next year from a goal-setting
Yeah.
standpoint, we should really start looking at this, because if we can get a better funnel for you all in K through 8,
Yes.
it's only going to help
Yes.
both of us when we get to the
Correct.
high school level. And honestly, we want to keep as many kids in
Yes.
greater
Community, yeah.
as possible.
Yes.
Did I miss anything, Brian? I don't know if you have any thoughts.
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive, and I think it's a win in so many different ways.
It really
especially
is,
for the
yeah.
students who, as you said,
Yeah.
hopefully can be within the greater
Yeah.
Yes.
community.
And the transportation would be a lot less.
Yes.
I do think that that is like a years-long
Oh, for sure.
process. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
gonna take a long.
We started one child last week.
Which is amazing, but I just mean to
Going
see
great.
that.
To make it a systemic kind of.
Yeah.
Lori, on a parallel conversation, what do you expect that the impact would possibly be of the two new housing developments coming online?
Yeah, isn't that the question?
Because
of
the
day?
problem is,
Yeah.
if we start creating a lot of special education classrooms, we're filling up our regular, and then we have an
Yeah,
influx
no,
of
we were already-
150 kids,
Yeah,
we have a problem.
yeah, we're already there a little bit, and obviously it's a CPS conversation mostly. The high school, because it's big and all these moving pieces, you know, kids move all day long, so it's not like a one place that gets impacted. I mean, the high school, have we all enjoyed the fact that the high school is now just under 1,200, and that is the number it was built for, and we can definitely feel the difference, that we're just not squished in every direction. But can we get back to the 1,300 and manage it? Clearly we can if we did it for quite a while. So I would doubt it'd be 100 high school kids. That would seem like a big
No,
number.
You're talking K-12.
Yeah, I would think, I mean,
Pre-K
from the Nathan Pratt complex, we pull about a little over 100 kids pre-K-12. So for lack of another, you know, metric, that seems like a reasonable guess, as we might pick back up another 100.
Both complexes
200
are
kids.
How many units is
Larger, aren't they?
Yeah, that's big, that would be bigger.
Yes,
That
the
is
total
bigger,
is
yeah.
larger.
2 years out.
Much,
Yeah.
almost double.
Nathan Pratt is.
No, if these two
No.
things come online,
They're bigger.
yeah, they're like, I think, close
Yeah,
to
so we're
400
thinking
units.
200
Do you know how many
potentially.
units are at Nathan Pratt?
Like 2, yeah.
Like 2-ish,
I
two and
think that's
change.
pretty close to at least one of the complexes that's coming online. I've been
Right,
emailing with
both
the
of them,
town
I think, are
planner.
close to 3-something.
Yeah, I think they're both in the 200s.
And they're
Yeah.
both on that side of town.
It's 350 at the Prescott, Nathan
Okay,
Pratt.
so that's bigger than, yeah, so.
Okay.
Who knows?
The first year, it was a shocker.
Yes.
Yeah, we're,
Yeah.
And I think people are sort of stuck there, like everybody in real estate right now. Like, it's tough to move around.
so. But anyway, I think you're right. Efficiencies and student benefit in Carlisle would be fantastic,
Getting colder over there.
all the way around. Yeah, no, it is pretty cold here now. You can't find the sweet spot.
I'm just wondering how many, if we could just get a look at how many classrooms we each actually have in every elementary school.
Well,
That's-
so, you know, they don't sit empty if we filled them with, you're right, SPED programs.
No,
have
no, but
started out.
how many regular education classrooms do we currently have now versus how many could we have?
That's all in the documents you've got
Okay.
for CPS, so we
Okay.
can dive in, yeah.
Okay,
All right,
yes, sorry.
what's next?
Just to, a little heat call there. Since it's relevant, we are proposing a non-resident tuition revolving fund at CPS, which allows us to take in money for tuitions efficiently, financially, and kind of
At CPS,
anticipation.
though,
yeah, but that could affect.
It's relevant to that.
It's relevant to your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, we already have one at the high school, but it could allow us to get kids into the pipeline that help later. So I'll keep going here. Our excess and deficiency was certified at 1.7, almost 1.8 million on June 30th. We're going through the certification process now. Just to, we do have, free cash doesn't, I think, have a limit, but our, unlike free cash, excess and deficiency does. It's 5% of the operating and capital budget of the current year, so our cap, the most we could carry is 1,892,000, so we're not far off from that. I typically will include a report in a school committee agenda when we get it certified, just so you see what the new amount is. But we're in a queue with the Division of Local Services, Department of Revenue. So we'll provide an update. I'm anticipating it might decline a bit, but there's a few moving parts, so I don't want to provide a forecast at this point. If it comes to it, we have talked, about what would happen if we had to make cuts, and these are kind of initial thoughts. We haven't done a deep dive into this, but the OPEB trust we're thinking is fairly well funded. We could potentially reduce that. Technology budget, we do want to make progress on that, so maybe some of that could be reduced. Other things would require us to look more deeply, and so we're hopeful that the way we shared, the information we shared shows and supports that we've reached guideline. There is that shift across the two towns where the enrollment shift affects Concord and benefits Carlisle. But overall, if looking at it across the two towns, we have met the number.
And just a reminder that even though it's a $60-some thousand delta in Concord, if it doesn't stay out of guideline, we actually have to cut 90,000 because it's proportional. Right.
So that's what we've identified here as 90, 95. And that's the presentation on the budget.
Great.
Any questions?
I think one of the hopes we had tonight, not certainly to take some questions tonight, but also to take questions that you might need us to research because we don't have it off the top of our heads. And then maybe to, at the next meeting, spend a little bit of time on highlighting what I put together to paper on historic and storytelling.
So are you doing that the next meeting?
I was thinking the next meeting,
Okay.
just time.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, if you're doing that, let's hold questions until after that, but yeah.
I think,
I think that's great.
I think this was a lot already.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
my instinct to let you process that.
I have a couple questions. Is it time?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
My first one is super boring. I was going through the 100 level, and I just had a question. There were some money allocated to something called the school choice assessment and the SPED assessment. What are those?
So you don't see that this is the CPS side because the town does. So when kids school choice into another district, we get assessed a per pupil amount.
Got it. Okay, so that's all. Okay, so that's
Same with charter. If they choose to go to a charter, we get assessed a per pupil amount for charters.
And then my next question is like a bigger potential discussion, but to your point, so, and this is sort of building off of Julie's statement, which I thought at the beginning was lovely, and it moved me enough that I'm wondering, so, took some notes. So, we talk about here a lot that our budgets can be viewed as a value statement. And even more specifically, I've come to see our budgets kind of can be seen as an expression of our strategic plan. If you start to really go down deep and look at all these things. So and how we intersect with the budget and the narrow scope of what we can really do as school committee members. One of the largest things that we can do is approve your budget, look at it, ascertain whether it is a true expression of our strategic plan, give you feedback on that, and then ultimately advocate for it. And this year, thankfully, there won't be the need to do that so vociferously as in years past. And, you know, but we have in fact had to advocate it and for it. And sometimes that advocacy, at least in my tenure, has been really challenging and really difficult, and not without creating a tremendous amount of tension between different groups in town. So, and then piggybacking on what Julie said, like, it does seem to be that there is a sizable interest by a subset of the population in Concord to look at and to sort of ensure that we are appropriately putting resources specifically to DEIB kind of related things. And again, what we can do as members is to ensure that the budget is an actual expression of that. So what I'm wondering, and when I looked through all the 100 level, I see, but it's, no offense, it looks so boring on the 100 level. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity. Sorry, it does. It looks so boring. If there's some ability to sort of aggregate what that looks like, maybe even looking at it over a couple of years, showing what that, like how we've grown that investment in sort of tangible, more interesting narrative ways, so that, because I think it's important that the community sees it, and Julie, you were so well spoken today talking about how that's a priority for you, and I'm wondering if that is a realistic ask for you guys to sort of put that together for like our next meeting, or at least before we have to ratify this budget.
Just to be sure we're understanding the ask. Take DEIB and show what our plan, what we've spent to meet the plan we made.
Yeah, and I think, what I'm realizing is sometimes I think it gets lost in the community when, we say, oh, we've added a additional METCO director, or an additional, adjustment counselor, or even like our new reading curriculum. Then it depends on how really big do you want to go with DEIB, and that is a different discussion. But I think if the community is not understanding our investment, I think let's show them. And again, why it's meaningful to me is because that's the only thing we really have purview over. I can't tell you, Shelley, what phonics curriculum is best. That's your view. I can't tell you, I think we need to do restorative circles versus, whatever the alternative is. But I can ensure that your budget reflects our values here. And so, to me, if we can, at the very least, demonstrate to the community that we are doing that, and that is where we have purview, I think that is a meaningful discussion to have. And again, if it's not a realistic ask.
Yeah, I think we can certainly do it. I think the challenge is when you get to things that are more ubiquitous but have a huge impact, we'll probably just have to name those, and it'll be harder to quantify.
Put them as outside the core.
Is it easy for me to say, we have a 0.25 FTE committed to the calculus project?
Right.
That I can certainly pull out.
Yeah.
Things that are.
And so do it how you want to, but I think, and I don't know if that's something that everyone is interested in.
It might be both,
So it might be multiple lenses, I think, that we can, to your point, like, it's nuanced, right? So what is like the straight ask, and then what is like, that is like very clear, and then what parts live outside of it that's more of a narrative? So I didn't want to cut you off. What were you going to say?
Well, I just have a very specific question along those lines. The METCO budget with the METCO grants, with specific money that we do spend on METCO and METCO transportation. Some of these other things like the calculus, tangential, but almost specific, but that's up to you whether to include that or not in the METCO.
I mean, the purpose of the calculus project is to get diverse students to high-level math. So to me, that's DEIB.
No, but I'm asking Metco.
She's talking more specifically Metco.
Oh, sorry, okay.
I'd like to also illustrate Metco Inc.'s concern, constant question, constant lobbying about the Metco's not fully funded, and what we do to additionally, above the Metco grant, to make it a better experience, we very much hope. So, I don't think that's controversial. I don't think there's any problem with having that discussion because, I think it's incumbent on all districts to do the work, and I think most do, not just us, to, fill the gaps in between the METCO grant and what all students need, right? Transportation to and from athletic events on the weekends and so forth, so.
And even having those discussions in public, might help Millie. She could
That's what I'm saying.
draw on our meeting.
That's what I'm saying.
And,
Well, I just think it's important to have a conversation of the value also that METCO brings to this community.
Absolutely,
Because
1,000%. And that, we can't put a price tag on that.
Yes, you can. I think it's invaluable that, bringing my son, letting my son come to school out here does more for Concord than it does for my son. So I think that that's why it's important to have the conversation of how important METCO is, not only for what Concord does for METCO, but what METCO brings to this home.
1,000%.
Because the conversations that I've had to have, forced to have, about what a METCO family looks like, what a METCO student looks like, is, I would think that in 2025 we don't have to have these conversations, but unfortunately we do, so.
Right, and I'm saying,
So that's why it's
totally
important
agree
to have
with
these
you,
conversations
and I hate to
before
have it come down to a, we can't afford to have METCO kind of a situation, because that's
That's not gonna
terrible.
happen.
Right.
I think what I would also like to do, though, in the same spirit of what we said, and Aisha has been great with giving feedback, so I think when we have that view, what I want to make sure that we give time to it I keep on saying next meeting, is we might not be able to finish it, but I think to Alexa's point, before we ratify anything, I think what we should say is, for example, if there is things that you're hearing from the parents or from students, or if you're hearing from students or families that require things, we do have this budget to work in, but can we streamline some transportation to make room for something in FTEs and still
Sure.
kind of look at the money in ways to, so I think having everything on the table is a good thing.
We don't have to complete the conversations by the time we vote on a warrant article.
Right, exactly, that's what I mean, so I think that would be really valuable, I think we're all aligned on that, and then I think just making sure that during the discussion, I don't want to put in the liaisons, I think during the budget, if you're comfortable with it, we can solicit feedback, you have the meeting tomorrow night, Millie's gonna be here in 2 weeks, I think, let's make sure that we have that discussion, and I think, I'm leaning on transportation because that's one that comes up a lot, and we hear about the increases, so are there things that we can do to streamline it, but still make sure that there's access on weekends or late, I think just looking at it.
I mean, we've done a
I know
lot
you
of
have.
different things. I'd
Right.
be happy to storytell, and
No,
it's
no,
just
and I think that's what it is, but
tricky. It's
and
really
I think
tricky.
everything changes, it's what, like you said, it's 2025 is if we need to update some things, so ever since I'm new to this, so I keep on hearing, well, it's been going for 50 years, okay, awesome, and there's been huge pivots that I've heard from
There
you.
have, so we want to
So,
share
we
those
just wanna
too.
make sure that it's
Yeah.
as transparent as possible,
Yeah.
so, okay.
I have just one, obviously, I know this is a regional conversation, I think this goes without saying, but just have this for both budgets.
Totally
K to
agree.
8.
Sure,
Oh,
sure.
of course.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And then
Thank
I
you.
have one other addition, are you?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
I'm done,
So just to clarify, it's both METCO program costs and DEIB.
Yes, Cynthia's sort of becomes a subset of my ask, so you're asking essentially
No, I
to
think- and I think it's an
disaggregate some
important-
stuff. Yeah.
DEIB stuff might show up in a lot of places and not, we might not catch everything there, we have an
And
anti-bias
that's
reporting
fine,
tool
of
that's
course.
not
I don't think
classified
anyone's
as-
going to hold you to the dime.
Right. I have a quick question on the boards. How many boards are you talking about? How long will it take to replace?
Oh, the interactive boards.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name. I'm it's not the active.
Clear
boards.
Touch.
Clear Touch. How long will it take?
3.5.
3.5
That
years.
money
Oh, this is
probably
3.5
maybe 4.
boards.
No.
Wait, no,
3.5
years.
This is year one, FY '27, '28.
So you'd have
Do the same
comparable
money,
costs
maybe
every year for the
29,
next.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's other talks we've had, but I'll just leave it at that, yes.
Okay, all right. I was
There's
just,
a lot of boards.
yeah, it's a lot of boards.
Right, which is why we thought we needed to get started.
Totally.
One topic I'd like to explore further, and you've alluded to this a little bit in your comments and also in your narrative document, but I would love to have a bigger conversation around what's not in the budget. I know we've talked about this at FinCom a lot, and they would be particularly interested in seeing it, but just I think you've named this, that like we do zero-based budgeting, and so a lot doesn't even make it to the conversation table, and so I think it would be really beneficial to the community to see
Sure.
what those things are.
Sure.
Some of those things are, or like just even the buckets of what those things are.
Agreed.
That's really,
Is the launch retail space, I didn't see that called out unless I missed it.
It was in the fixed cost section, in the 5,000.
Fully funded.
31,000, yeah, very reasonable cost, and
Okay.
they're already in there.
No, I'm.
A lot going on in there.
Yeah, as an aside,
sure it's
Painted, there's materials and shelving in there, they're
So
getting set
do you
up.
think it's a January setup, February setup?
I think they're pushing hard for January,
Okay, great.
but things
Soft.
might be taking a little longer than, yeah, soft. Yeah. There's a lot of positive energy there, though, so,
If there's an opportunity, they need people to attend a soft opening, I think.
yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Right?
Yes.
Great. All right, so moving through, I think this is a great conversation. I'm glad we did the quote-unquote listening session. I think it worked well.
Yeah.
I think we have some good follow-ups for 2 weeks from now. So let's get back to point C on the warrant. So it sounds like we're gonna probably discuss the amenities building in 2 weeks, so we're gonna hold on.
121.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, this was just to remind you that since you probably won't know what you're doing, you have to decide if you're going to put a warrant article in or not.
And I'll just be the reminder that the warrant is opening on January 20th and closes on February 19th.
You don't need to remind us.
Not you, for us, on the amenities building. Like, I think that's.
So your
Closes
last,
on the 19th.
February 4th is when you'll have to have made a decision.
And I'm thinking too, like, when we
Right in the moment.
outline the discussion on the 21st, like, and maybe you do it in the agenda overview, but sort of,
Option one, option two.
or like
We can vote.
I just feel like it's so confusing, like, if you could just be like, if this, then this, if, you know what I mean? Like,
Is that something the
Yeah, the subcommittee could work on when we
oh, thanks,
post our meeting.
Mary. Yeah, okay, fine.
Tuesday, can we post for Friday?
Okay, we'll do that.
Can we post for
Shit,
Friday?
sorry. I don't want to do that, but great, we'll do it.
Make a recommendation.
Can maybe post for Friday? A Friday
Can we
meeting?
post for Friday? Oh, yeah, we should post.
I'm asking you.
Oh.
Brian said yes. Do you say
What
yes?
time, though? Because we have to get it posted in both towns tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Okay, so, hold on.
Meet after that.
Okay, we'll discuss
Friday the
later
10th.
and we'll let you know.
We'll let you know
Friday
in the
morning's going to be really hard for us to
Okay.
pull off.
Okay.
We also have to send us
What if
an
we did it
agenda.
at like Friday at like lunch? Brian, lunch? You like lunch? No?
He's looking at his schedule.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
We'll talk.
Okay, we'll talk.
Friday's just tricky.
I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Capital stabilization for the warrants. Do we want to talk about that now?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think, given our increase, that we should ask for it this year, but I just want to say that I absolutely think we should be making contributions to a capital stabilization fund. We should not need to use our operating budget to fund the interactive boards. We should have money in a capital stabilization account that can pay for the amenities building, that can contribute to the memorial field, things like that. So we need to find a way to get this into the budget at some point so that we can be more self-sufficient and not need to do what we need to do to get capital projects done.
What do you think, I mean, would that be dependent, like, if we're not going to go with a warrant for the amenities, do we want to prioritize this, the stabilization fund?
Well, the
I
problem
mean,
with
we
that
could
is
tie
that
this discussion together.
Right.
That too? Yep.
But that would be operating money versus capital money. You know what I mean? Like,
We
it's,
have a capital fund?
No.
What number are you thinking about?
But we don't have any money in it.
Right. So we have the structure, you just have no money.
there's just no money.
We created the structure in COVID because
What
we
kind
had
of
some surplus,
number
and
are we
that's how you paid for.
Would that be
Is
our?
it something that we could redirect OPEB money since it's so healthy?
Yeah, I think I think that for this year, so we've talked a little bit offline about this. I
We've
don't think we
talked a
wanna
lot
do
about
anything-
this
I don't think we want to do anything this year. I really want,
I think-
I was the one that wanted to push to get it on the radar so we could at least talk about it. I think that we should look at, in the future, get the FinComs to talk about it also and see if we can get any buy-in. Look at the combination of debt service declining, maybe some share of that, maybe not. I know Carlisle, I've heard, has planned on that to fund their own capital projects, but if you can't use a decline in debt service, maybe we look at, okay, can we gradually ratchet down the OPEB contributions as we get more funded and shift 50,000 to capital stabilization, and then eventually, when it's fully funded, you're shifting that to capital stabilization contribution. But I think once we start, even if it's 50,000 in the first year we do it, I think it'll be easier to continue and increase it. And, you know, we could do it opportunistically, like if we got lucky and, not lucky, but like what if our tuitions come down? This was an exceptional year, next year, and we have a big decline. Maybe that's an opportunity if we have a 2% increase.
I'm going to
to
be
the
happy if
budget.
they're stable.
So I
This is
think,
what we've been doing. I'm like, it's not the right moment to ask for that, since we're getting such support.
we've gone through
He's
this
not
year,
wrong.
and we
He's not wrong.
see what our numbers are.
Yeah.
And there was an exception made for out-of-district tuition, so it doesn't feel like it's the right time to ask for it. But I think it's the right time to start the conversation
Cue it up.
without the pressure of an ask and say, this is something we want to look at, and how, you know, what do the FinComs think, and.
And
but
really,
also-
it would be a win for the communities, because if you could have some money on hand, you would avoid borrowing, which
Right.
ultimately costs everybody more money. And you'd be a little more autonomous and not need warrant articles, and really high level, like $1 million warrant articles, and then creating ballot votes too, which cost the town money. Like, if you had a little more to work with, without needing to go borrow it, it would be good for everybody.
I am intrigued about the possibility of, like, what if we didn't have an amenities warrant article, but had money towards capital stabilization fund? Then could we later on partner with CC and Play and somehow?
They couldn't use that money. That's a trade-off you
Yeah,
have.
that's the trade-off, that's the trade-off. It's
But
more
like
thinking.
If we had this, so just as an example, if this if amenities building needed to be done 4 years from now, and we shifted the OPEB money
Mm-hmm.
to the capital stabilization, we'd be able to pay for the whole project ourselves.
Or the track.
Yeah.
That would take a little longer, I think that's,
Yeah, but you get a
I don't know how much,
pipeline.
I don't know how much that would cost, I forget.
It's about 2 million.
2 million,
Okay,
that's more.
not much longer.
Right.
Anyway, so that's the idea, but it doesn't seem like the time to ask for it.
Yep, okay. No, it's good to know. All right, the last piece on the discussion is, we need a school committee representative to bargain with the CCHS tutors and transportation.
We generally like two in case,
Two of
that way we
each.
can, we don't lose momentum if somebody has issues.
And this is specific to CCHS.
Well, so you've got 2 units there. CCHS tutors is just high school, transportation's K-12, bus
Okay.
drivers.
Oh, that's why I missed the 12, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I thought, okay.
And this would start,
So one
I
region.
mean, you know, spring, not imminently, but you probably want to get going and planning in March. We've already got one letter from the tutors, demand to bargain, which just means they're ready. Normally, we would start in March-ish. These are smaller.
This is 2 different negotiations, right?
Different
Yes.
negotiations.
Yes.
We run 8
Yes, yes.
bargaining units, those of us who get 2 districts, so this is 2 of them, 2 of the smaller ones.
I just wanted to make sure they weren't part of one.
No, 2
so
separate.
you're looking for 2 volunteers for each.
I think so,
For each.
I
CCH,
did bus drivers last
normally.
cycle, so I'm happy to do that again.
That'd be great.
I've never done one of these, so I'd love to do the tutors.
I'd like to do one, yeah.
Yeah.
And just for those of you who don't know, usually meetings are at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, because we can't bargain during their workday.
Okay.
So we tend to do it like late afternoon into early evening.
And we usually have someone that's bargained before, prior to give, right?
If anyone wants to help me
Sure.
with the tutors, I've done it before.
I did tutors before.
Yes, you did.
I
Well,
know.
isn't that convenient
Isn't
and
that
wonderful?
convenient?
Crazy.
I'm a little bargained out, but
Well, yeah, well, because
I
we're doing the MO.
We're still at the
We're
table
doing
with
the
the,
table with the middle
middle
school
school
department
building
chairs
service.
and the,
yeah, we've
building
got some follow-ups
workers.
from last year, still.
yeah.
But I'm,
Oh, I'll do a transportation with Andrew.
Why don't we do these? You want Andrew and Carrie do transportation?
Sure.
All right, who's
I'll do
coming with me with tutors?
I'll do
All right,
tutors.
Tracy and I are doing tutors.
Okay.
Unless anyone else really wanted to do it.
No.
I can do it if nobody else wants to, but I think there's the benefit of having
She said no.
historic knowledge.
All right, Carrie and Tracy for tutors. Yeah, I've got you twice, I missed something.
Julie and Tracy.
Got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Carrie and Andrew for buses.
you don't need 2 for each district for the
Joy friends.
do you?
What's that?
You don't need one for each district for transportation, do you? Oh, they're both, they're in the region as well, never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
That's right, you're in both.
You're all gonna vote it,
Mindful
so.
of the time, because I know you guys still have your Concord
Yeah, I
meeting
would
after this,
sure
so,
agree with that. Yeah.
I think public comment, we moved it up unless there's a hand raised, which I don't see online. Did you want to speak again?
Yes, something came up.
Yeah?
Did the name thing too again?
Hey, Mike, can you talk louder?
I'll try.
Especially in the absence of a microphone. I have trouble hearing you.
Michael Williams, 1284 Sudbury Road. Just had a quick comment actually to Alexa. You made an excellent comment on looking at how the departments, the district and the regional district, show that they have a serious commitment to EIB. I would submit, though, it might not only be by looking at the budget and how the budget is allocated, but by looking at the budget, challenging the budget, and then looking at the data that comes from the actions. See that the data that the budget drives supports what's being done. Interrogating that, making certain that the results make sense for the dollars spent, and where it doesn't, tweak it going forward. So it's a good point, looking at what you spend, what you get for what you spend. Is it working? Is it doing what you want to have done? And then when it isn't, tweak it so that it works. So, good point, good point. Another thing to Julie, I like this, but people might find things that happen during the meeting that they don't want to comment again. That's what happened, so thank you.
Welcome. Yep. That's why, Brian, you brought it up, we do in Carlisle, so you can't take the credit for moving it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
There's a hand up.
Oh, there is a hand up.
Yeah, that's on the webinar, though. I think, I don't think it's not a community member.
I was wondering.
Oh, yeah, okay. I think just because we have been doing this for 2.5 hours, I just want to do a quick recap, and then we will adjourn. So the one thing is the comment that came up earlier that we will cover in a couple weeks, but I just want to make it known. So Deb's replacement for MECO, Aisha's brought up, we want to make sure that there is a parent
Yeah,
panel
so
that
it's
will-
actually both MECO directors'
Correct.
positions, so we'll be running a full search, which means we put a committee together, which will include parent representation, student representation, teachers, school, probably one of you, maybe two, since it's both districts, that sit and do that
Yeah.
whole process with us.
Yep. So I just did want to respond to that, and we'll cover it in more detail, but I did want to make sure that that was publicly noted, because I think it's really important.
Yep.
I think that the other piece is that, as you mentioned, we have the coffees. I think getting out in the community, over-communicating is a good thing right now, always, but especially now. So we have the one scheduled in Carlisle for the 27th, more details to come. I think the idea of having the one in Boston in early February to also take that opportunity to communicate. Aisha will run a point, Carrie will support. Alexa's gonna get the one going in Concord.
I'm the worst, I know I haven't
No,
done.
it's fine. Campus completion, subcommittee is formed, you guys will report out next meeting. I think one of the things that we haven't talked about, but we had the MASC charting the course. Tracy gave me some good advice. I think now that I'm chair, coming back with fresh eyes, Brian and I took it I think the second week into our tenure. So I'm planning on going. Aisha, I know you and Domingos had asked if we could go, maybe we could go together. If anyone else would like to revisit, I'm gonna be looking.
I know it sounds weird, but like, you could keep going.
It was so much
and
better the second time.
The second time was way better. I would even consider a third time. I mean, it's useful. I know, you think it's
Again.
I just went, so I'm good
It's
for,
good.
For at least 6 months.
You get something to.
Did you really, though?
I did.
And I also think
Where's
they're
that
different
certificate?
presenters, so.
Oh, I have it. He sent it to me.
Oh, good. All good.
You showed it at that meeting. You actually had it with them to show everyone.
But I do think it's just important, because it's, I think, one of the things that I've struggled with since being a part of it is like, what do we actually have control over, what we don't, and that is just really helpful, so I'm looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, because I missed that the first time, and only because we went when we were like new chairs, right?
Yeah.
And I was
We
like,
asked all the
now I know what to
questions.
pay attention to, and now I know what the
Yeah.
questions are to ask. You don't know anything that first time.
Yeah.
There's too much.
It's like I almost, and again, you went, and that's lovely, but I almost like recommend like going in your 11th month. You know what I
No,
mean?
but
Like,
here
you
you go
get
right
so
away.
nervous, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I gotta do this, or like, I don't look like I'm invested. I'm like, retrospectively, I would've gone like 11 months in, it's
Well,
the time
this
to
is
go.
why Andrew waited.
Yeah,
Andrew,
well,
Andrew
no,
did
but
so brilliant,
early,
Andrew.
we're not going, and then crap, we're going.
Big picture guy.
It's just fun. It's just
you can't win with us, Andrew.
Can I just ask a question? Is there going to be any retirement fanfare for Deb? Do you think that's probably coming up at some point? I mean, she's been here.
It's a very, it's her health, so I don't have an answer to that right now.
Okay, okay, that's okay. But, just congratulations on her retirement. I know it's her.
Yeah, it's
She will be
bittersweet. I'm not.
missed. Yeah, she
it's-
will be missed.
Oh, very much so.
Very much,
And, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
I, just before we close, I just want to circle back to what was said at the beginning. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think this is a good start. I think what Aisha actually just said was giving me pause to say, like, we spend so much time talking about, like, DEIB, MECO programs of, like, we do look at it at the budget, we have to, it's part of our role, but I do think there is a flip to think about. Like, I've said this before, like, people aren't are actually more comfortable if I had my hair dyed pink because I would fit a stereotype. It's true, like, and I think it's really frustrating because people want to put people in buckets. I felt it more since moving here than I did anywhere else that I've lived. It's like uncomfortable when like Talbot's Julie shows up. It's because it's not part of the stereotype, and it's really annoying, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I think I like the way that Aisha mentioned it. It's not, we are going to look at the budget, we are going to do it because we want to make sure that the dollars are going to the things that are going to have impact. But I think also there is a richness, and I told Alexis this, like, I do statistics and population health for a living, and I looked at the data, like, the 5-year projections in Concord and Carlisle are not getting that much less white, okay? So, it's not changing that much. There's an increase in, like, mixed race and other things, like, so, like, that's why I say we have to lean into things and see, like, have people feel seen, and that means a number of different things through different lenses. And we're not gonna solve that in one night. We're not gonna solve it probably this school year, but we can certainly start charting that path, so. With that, I have a motion to adjourn the Concord-Carlisle Regional School District meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Julie.
So moved.
5 minutes?
Yes, please, I was going to suggest that as well.
5-minute break.
5-minute break.
All right. I didn't bring water, so I don't have to use the bathroom.
Sorry, I was coffee, water. I'm hot, I'm cold. I don't
I can just
We're going to start with the middle school construction update, and just to note for everybody, this is going to be a reoccurring agenda item. We are going to start to get updates both from Alexa and Andrew from the building committee perspective, but then also from Dr. Hunter just on what's happening in the building since she's in it so frequently. But yeah, we're getting down to the final countdown, and this is very exciting. For our entire community, it's a huge investment. It's going to be great for our students, for our community, and to you.
Yeah, and we'll just scroll through some pictures really quickly, but just because it's so beautiful and worth talking about, I think, as you're about to be the owners of this place. So that's the entryway and some of the outdoor photos. Grass is growing somehow in January, I don't know. Landscaping's wrapping up for the most part, still some spots there. The big piles there are going to stay because those are going back out on the field once we demolish Sanborn, but they're definitely getting the site spruced up in finality. The next slide is a classroom, so that's pretty typical. Piece one of the four on the team, common there.
A little bigger.
I can try.
Just do the slideshow.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
On the right, it's
I know.
top. Yeah.
I can't see it all the way. I got it. Yeah. Better?
Oh, yeah. Much better. Thank you.
It's Zoom only.
Because our technology's not working. Sorry. I don't know. Tomorrow's problem, I guess. That's one of four classrooms that are along the team common. So that's a dividing wall in the middle that's going to get opened up. They're going to start opening those up tomorrow. We were really excited because it'll help us to really see the classrooms. And then where you're looking in, that's where that glass partition will go up. There will be curtains if teachers want to pull, so they have four walls. But we're really excited with the classroom. The floors went down most recently, so we're still enjoying flooring, and pretty much all the classrooms have flooring now. Just little bits, the team commons, the piece I'll highlight on the right, that's one of the team common spaces that's getting close to finished. And there's all these, the number of pull-out spaces where the kids can work in small groups and things. We just keep reminding ourselves how many of them there are, and they're spectacular.
Yeah.
This will get all finished up. There'll be shelving in that wooden case there, and then a whiteboard down the other far end. And then I think, pretty sure, this looks like either one of the science rooms or I think it's a part of a science room on the right. More traditional room on the left, still getting wrapped up. So those are your classroom spaces. This starts to move us into the other portions. A little bit of transitional space there. We were excited just to see doors go up a couple weeks ago because it really mattered a lot. Yeah, it mattered a lot. To the left is outside of the library, so that's really new. That had been wide open up until last week, so they've closed that off, and now you can see how the glass and the seating there that we've seen in schematics for years are finally coming to life. The stairway to the right is the one in the B wing, which goes from the library essentially up to where art and world language are, which is really a very cool little nook up there with maybe 5 or 6 classrooms, 2 art classrooms and world language. It's a really neat, quieter space. But that's the stairway they're finishing up. This is the kitchen, so it's going to be a real kitchen. The flooring has been the last piece, so obviously they haven't been able to put everything in yet, but they've got it all queued up to do that. The servery area is getting built out. It's really starting to come together. Like, this is out in the cafeteria. Those are, believe it or not, those are our waste and composting bins.
I love it.
Oh, wow, they look great.
Yeah.
Doesn't it look great?
Yeah. Who would get excited about that?
I mean,
But-
just the light in that cafeteria
Yes.
is
Yeah.
exceptional.
It's
It
exceptional.
feels like you're in the woods. It's
Yes.
so
Look
just
out and-
peaceful. Yeah.
It's really going to be a fantastic space. And then the flooring, can you just turn your volume down? Thanks. It's bad enough hearing myself once. That's the gym. The big excitement there was the wood floor starting to go down last week. So it's really, yeah, it's a gorgeous gym. My goodness, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So those are some highlights, but more to come every day now as the finishes go in. It more and more gets done. I'll bring you pictures of my ceiling, my wood ceiling that I pretty well fought for through the whole project. It really is proving to warm up some of the spaces where it just takes
Has that been installed yet?
some of it. So they're finishing it up now. There's some in the library, there's some in the bridge area there between the two buildings, and might be some in the cafeteria too.
I think that there's so many highlights, but one of the things that I think we need to just really celebrate is, all of it, but is the fact that it's on time and we're going to start in February 25th.
February 24th, yep.
And that it's under budget, which is, I like.
Yeah, I mean, Alexa and Andrew are there.
Unbelievable.
Because we didn't use all of the $2 million bidding contingency and we're so healthy on other contingency, we're running in millions of dollars of contingency.
Yeah, but I mean, even like little change orders are heavily scrutinized at this point, so it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will give a lot of credit to that, I forget what they're called, but that change order subcommittee, we are,
TRC.
Yeah. It is never lost on me how talented the folks on the building committee are. I mean, to have Dawn Guariello with her expertise as an architect, Steve Staszewski with his construction experience. I mean, you can hear like the confidence and deep knowledge in their voice whenever they're talking about things. So, I think the community should feel really good about the fact that the select board did really put together a committee that has the requisite expertise to ensure that we are on time and under budget. And I know you've been working.
Yeah, and I can't, Gail Dowd is absolutely my right hand and often the day-to-day person keeping all those I's dotted and T's crossed. I'm kind of the big weight that swings in as needed, but it's been a real
And I know there's 10 people on this meeting and probably not a lot of people will watch it, but we are up and active again on the Instagram account, which does, even though we don't have, thousands of followers, we've started a 7-week countdown, and you'll see we're going to start posting the pictures that have come in from you. So that account will generate, I think, hopefully some excitement within the community.
What's the name of it?
CMSBC in Concord.
Right.
But I don't see anything new.
What?
It hasn't happened yet?
No, it did. I do stories, Cynthia, and they disappear in 24 hours.
Well, it's not
You need to be a millennial.
stories.
I'm not showing them, I'm not.
Because I posted it a day ago and it's
I look
gone.
at Instagram every day, but sometimes it's
You must not like my algorithm. Get back on my algorithm.
All right, I'm gonna have to.
People don't
Anyway,
have,
so I actually.
people don't have an Instagram account. Where else would they find photos?
Nowhere. No, actually, the website has regular construction updates, and Heather did just share with you, I think, and with me, she put together a communications plan, and I think we're going to do a lot more push-outs to the subscriber list as well, which we had done throughout the sort of lead up to the special town meetings. So that subscriber list is fairly robust, people who've opted in. So Heather, I believe, is going to work with Tom to
I'm pretty sure Dakota will come along anytime I invite him.
Well, and I have to say, the Bridge Instagram today in particular was really good about the tax man with the story on there. So I don't know who's doing the Bridge Instagram. Is it you? It was excellent. I was like, oh, I love it. It's got some music on it.
And I will say, when Dakota was on our tour, Andrew was there, and I remember we said afterwards, Andrew's like, was the reporter the guy that was like rolling around on the ground in the sawdust? I'm like, yes, he's anyway. And so now there's floors, so you can be
a little less dusty.
You leave our
So the
tours.
photos that.
So
Lori
I haven't posted those yet. So on Monday, I did a 7-week countdown that, again, that story disappears. So we'll start posting the photos on Instagram at a regular clip. And then.
Can one of you edit the building committee website or no?
We don't do that. Erin does that. And so I think Heather articulated potentially like, we were going to start it in week 6. We're going to do a weekly update that will get pushed out to the subscriber list, and that will have photos.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at this point, I'll make sure you get photos that really show the changes, because that's what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks, is it's really going to turn into this school.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you have to tag her, but can you
we're pretty good
Can you
about
share
tagging
some of
each
hers?
other.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
a reel, so it stays there.
Okay.
Maybe a reel.
Yeah,
A reel, not a story,
Not
a
a
reel.
story,
Okay,
a
great, I
reel,
can
'cause
do the
it-
reels.
And then you can put the reel in the highlights, and then maybe the bridge can pick it up, and then they can repost it.
Do you follow our Instagram? All right, I love a new subscriber.
Yeah.
All right,
Not
thanks.
that I don't mind staying here till midnight, but
I know.
We had to have that
This is so
5 minutes.
it is, but
We're gonna put Bob, like, when you watch a podcast on the 1.5.
0.25.
We'll put you on the 1.5.
That's fine. That's how I do all my training.
There's a lot of,
Duplicative stuff.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, can you do it at the 100 level?
That's a lot longer.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Now, so great. Anything else on the middle school, Cynthia? I know you had a lot to say about it. I'm just kidding.
No, I was just gonna say, I talked
wanna
to
be
Carrie
here till
offline.
midnight.
No, I talked to Carrie offline. I just reminded her with the high school project,
Yes.
they reported every meeting, because there's a subcommittee of this region,
Yeah.
to the school committee. So every meeting, they talked about the building.
Yeah,
They showed
yeah.
pictures of the building.
Yeah.
So, and they had full in-person building committee meetings almost
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
So it was just different.
It's just different because it's under the select board.
Yes,
But we are gonna really celebrate.
Yeah, I think from here on, we keep doing it, yeah.
So maybe just an update at every meeting, right?
Well, that's what I said.
we're gonna leave it
Every
on.
meeting, it'll be on the agenda, and we're gonna give.
Love it.
Free advertising.
Totally.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching our meetings.
Yep.
Must-see TV. We're like friends.
All right, so they want you to skip right to the Concord-centric stuff.
All right,
The
Bob, take
CPS
it
stuff.
away. Oh, wait, I'm gonna run, sorry. All right.
Where are you going?
I have to go in and out. I don't know.
So, I'm going to skip the first slide.
Yeah.
Per pupil expenditures, I would just note that Concord was 4th last year. It's now 3rd. Lincoln-Sudbury has surpassed it. So that's highlighted there.
Can I just ask a question about these? Are these in district or out of district?
It's everything. It includes out-of-district,
Yeah.
includes in-district. It's all students.
I feel like the gold standard is the in-district number, especially since now our FinCom has said, I don't care about out of district.
I would argue that it's not fair that we keep more students in district, and it makes us look, we're better because we keep more students in district. These other districts have a higher percentage, particularly Concord, they have a huge percentage of people, a lot more than 1% out of district. So I hear you. I could probably get that data if it came to it.
But this is DESI reported data too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they'd probably have somewhere, I might be able to find it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But it would be much lower for
Yes.
people, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Skip that.
same
Yeah,
objectives.
there you go.
Planning assumptions, I'll just note a couple things. We're assuming we transition successfully. We will transition successfully to the new middle school. There are consolidations factored in that we committed to previously. We ended up identifying $576,000 that you'll see identified here. There are $0 budgeted for Peabody and Sanborn in FY26.
Can we just slow down on that one? That's such
Yeah.
a big item, the consolidation savings that I know the FinCom and Select Board are both talking about. So we are bringing forward more than now, did we use some of the the additional to offset something else? Yeah, a little bit, of course. But the number is very clearly there at the 500,000 we committed to.
And, right, and so that came up last night, and
Yeah.
so they said we committed to 500,000, not the 548, but now here you're saying that you've actually have a savings of 576,000.
Yes.
Are you breaking down?
Yeah, a little further, it's
Yeah.
broken down.
So I've already talked about homeless
To a point.
transportation.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But I think it's important to note that the last bullet here, I'll talk more about this, but we, actually the one previously, the second to last bullet, we have to do what we did last year. We had our budget approved and we had a second slide. It's in the appendix. When I posted it in the materials, we asked for what's approved in the budget, and then we asked for an additional amount for homeless transportation that
In the
we're getting
warrant?
from the state.
I remember that.
Remember that?
So I don't compare that apples to apples, I just exclude that, but they set it up last year as a mechanism for us to get that money, and
Because the same thing's going to happen, the reimbursement's going to go to the
Right.
town, and we'll need to get diverted back to us.
but our numbers are larger, so it's a lot more important that we do it
Yes.
now.
Understood.
So the budget summary,
Has that discussion been happening?
Yeah. I wanted to just ask about the number. How many students do we have at CPS?
I have to pull it up. Why don't you let him keep talking and I'll find it.
40 to 50, I think.
Oh, sorry, no, I did it.
Fine.
It's 35 K to 8 and 8 middle school.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's in district.
In
That's
district.
the ones we're transporting.
Totally, so it's in district.
And how would you account for the empty rooms? Like, how has that impacted the enrollment?
It's left us in a holding pattern because kids moved and either they enrolled where they moved to or they are transporting back to us. It's minimized the influx, which is what we were worried about managing all at once. So it seems like it's coming, it just hasn't come yet.
It's
so.
unpredictable, whether it's going to be very young children.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this shelter tends to be young kids, but we've seen more diversity as the shelters are consolidating. Yeah, so.
It's very fluid.
That's the word, yes.
Isn't the news that their shelter funding is running out in January?
Well, so we knew that, they had to, I talked to Simon actually, Representative Cataldo, because they had to re-up it for the subsidy. So let's hope they still plan to do that, because it hasn't gone through yet. And obviously, the governor's talking about changing some of the terms, which will also have impact. So she's talking about 6 months limits instead of 9, as of this morning.
It's going to be a rocky January, I have a feeling.
So,
February.
yeah.
Okay, I'll continue. Budget summary by DESI function. You can see that most categories are fairly low, and I'll go through each of these shortly. And the out-of-district tuition costs here are stabler than they are at the high school, relatively flat. Overall FTE summary in most of this is CMS. Some of these were realized in prior years, and I'll go through it in a little bit more on the next slide.
And just a caveat, like some of that's placeholder, partially because we are still identifying and things change over the course of the year, so we're committing to the number and positions reducing, but exactly which ones may still move, like it might, Willard might not be what that looks like. Some of that's even from, because of the timing of what, like, we might have made an adjustment for this year that just shows up on the budgets this, as you see the presentation. I think the middle school, too, it's important to note that reduction in forces can trickle down into K-5 because it's one bargaining unit. And it will be a reduction.
Those are
seniority.
significant reductions.
Yeah.
They are significant reduction.
Yeah.
Yes.
At preschool, it's just adding 1 day to one staff member. Alcott, we looked at enrollments, and that it nets out classroom teacher for kindergarten to be level.
Can I just talk on kindergarten
Sure.
for a minute? Kindergarten has been a moving target at Thoreau and Alcott especially. This year, Thoreau never actualized, so we ended up at 3 sections, predicting we had 4, and then Alcott did finally actualize, which we'd been expecting was going to change at some point, and we just reallocated the position over to Alcott, so there was a budget neutral increase there. Maybe next time we can talk a little bit more about where we budgeted for sections. I've given you high-level totals, but I didn't give you the grade-level breakouts. But you can see Thoreau and Alcott, we keep adjusting up and down, which is important to talk about. Like every time I make those adjustments, there's a teacher in the mix.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a riff. So we're constantly responding to the enrollments. And of course, K, we only know what we know based on census numbers until they start registering, which they've started now, but then they trickle in. And so anyway, more to come on class configurations.
And tell me if if answering my question will lead to the unintended consequence of identifying RIFs too prematurely. But when I look at the 3 elementary schools, my understanding is Willard has the most amount of students, but it seems like it's getting the brunt of FTE reductions. Which
Those
is
two things aren't actually connected.
Okay, great.
So I can just.
Wonderful, fine.
The enrollment's up because of the shelter, and the other thing is about other things.
Okay, got it. That's fine.
We're going to talk a lot about the homeless staff, though, because especially it's very heavily focused on Willard. As the grant money slows down, we're going to have some really interesting things to manage next year.
And are those FTEs in the?
They're not even in those
They're
counts.
not in these numbers?
Nope,
right?
the grant-funded positions are on another
They're
slide.
not, okay.
Yeah, we'll show that.
But anyway, just the point is, we're constantly looking at class size and how many sections we have. We've never stopped looking at that as enrollments slow down, so I just want to be sure we keep saying that. So,
The special education teacher at Thoreau and Alcott, you see that one shows an increase of one and one's a decrease of another. At the time we built the budget and for '25, we actually had anticipated cutting one in each building. We ended up cutting two at Thoreau. So that's already happened. That's not.
right, so those were FTE, those were RIFs last spring
Yes, last spring.
that we made.
One of the Willard aides I know is a student that was in the shelter that moved for a specific program
Yeah,
at
don't worry.
Thoreau.
You don't need to, go into it. I was just curious. Sorry.
And then the bulk of this is the consolidation at the middle school. So I'll move on from this slide. I will also mention, we agreed in our contract to add the counselor at Thoreau, which we did add this year in advance of next year.
And that's where, in my narrative, I remind you that right now, the additional counselor is grant-funded at Willard. So if that dries up, we're going to have to at least leave a half-time counselor there per contract that is not in the budget. With or without the
The
homeless money.
halftime counselor was one at each.
It was half-time at each.
Halftime at- but 0.5 at, each.
Additional, so they have at least 1.5.
Is there any
Contractual.
sharing?
Right now, the one counselor that we've appointed into METCO is shared between middle school and Alcott.
And then, yeah, okay, I'll keep going. So the drivers at the 1,000 level, administration is up 7.8 or 138,000. A piece of that is salary increases, and then again, we have the software increases that we talked about in the regional budget for these subscriptions. The CPS shares a little bit more. It's 60%, CCRSD is 40%. So those are the two key drivers of the administration increase. Teaching instructions up 1.9% over FY25. You can see the teacher salary piece was actually 4.6%, including COLA, steps, and lanes. Non-teacher salaries was 2.1. I've pulled out the CMS consolidations separately. That's mostly staffing. We budgeted this all within the teaching and instructional area. Some of this might be non-instructional. We will work through that, and we are working through that. But for budget purposes, we all put it in the teaching and instructional support category.
I have a question, and I apologize if this is, I don't even know if this is relevant, but my question is, why so at CPS it's 4.6%, but at the region it was under the 3%? What's the?
A lot more retirements.
At the region?
At the region, yeah. And we also had a
So
slight FTE decline.
You gave a $1,000 notification
Yeah.
incentive, which I feel like helped. We had more in-hand confirmed retirements this fall than we've had.
It was like October or November
November
deadline?
1st. So that was good. I think last year, when we built the budget, we had almost none, and we were like, well, we can probably expect a few. It was really risky, so this time it was much
And it's
more
probably,
definitive.
there are so many more teachers and staff, K-8 than at the high school, so,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's worth noting, like, a 1.9 increase in this function is never happening again unless
Right, because of the middle school.
we're catastrophically making cuts. So
Right.
Yeah.
these are numbers that are one-time adjusts. Yeah, we knew that, right? I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
But it's worth saying.
Yeah, well, it
maybe 100
resets,
more
it
times.
resets the base down that 570-something, so that's certainly important.
That's,
But you're never going to see a 1.9 increase again in that.
No, but also when you look at the comparison, when we're at the same point next year, it's going to be
Yes.
up a lot, and
Which
that's
is
worth noting.
Why I'm reminding you, yeah.
exactly.
Like,
No,
oh, what a great year, I don't know, because it's only because you put up a new school.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, you need a fair number of retirements to offset the steps and lanes. Our COLA is 3%, so that's kind of, over 100 years, you'll arrive at the COLA on average, but assuming staffing is level, but in short time periods, you don't. Non-teacher salaries were modest at 169, 2.1%. Again, the consolidation savings. We had some reductions in supplies, materials through the zero-based budget process, really in a lot of areas, not really any one particular driver there. and contract services came down as well. Our other school services was driven by special ed transportation primarily, 67,000. It's about half the increase, and other than that, it was mostly inflationary pressures or just, normal inflation. But again, half of that 3.7% is special ed. Otherwise, that's a really modest increase. Maintenance and operations is up 2.7%. I will say I talked about the stormwater assessment in the region. We actually were running favorable to water and sewer, and the assessment that we were provided by DPW was actually less than the region. So we were able to absorb that with a minimal to no increase for water sewer. I think it was closer to 12,000 because we were running favorably. The big driver here is the cybersecurity costs, and then also some of our support contracts. We've seen some pressure on those prices. So 62,000, but again, overall, it's 2.7%.
And just a reminder, we're totally going on estimates given to us by the professional construction team about what the middle school's actually going to cost to run. You're building a budget you don't really have any actuals on, so that's a little anxiety producing, but hopefully the estimates are pretty close.
Yeah, so I did plug their guidance in, and so we do have a $91,000 offset when you combine heat and electricity and compare it to the electricity projection in the new building versus what it was in Peabody Sanborn. That's actually $91,000 in additional to the $576,000 that we shared earlier.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. Our insurance premiums are going up a bit. This is based on what we are paying this year, plus some modest inflation. We've had some losses, as you know, in Willard and Thoreau in my 2.5 years here. And before that, there was a fire in Thoreau, so this is not a surprise. It's catching up. Fixed assets, primarily this is buses. The increase, though, is that we put in we increased, it was from 5 to 20,000, a line for replacement equipment furniture. We've had requests from multiple elementary schools for updating some of the desks and furniture and equipment in their buildings. And we budgeted this in one building, but we're ultimately going to, decide during the year. Now that it's in the budget, we'll allocate it across the schools based on who needs it the most.
It's another one where you could spend a lot of money at once and try to do them all, but that isn't fiscally doable, so we'll just at least get started. And that might be a grade at a time, which that'll take a long time over 3 buildings, but at least it gets the momentum started, so.
A grade for one school.
Yeah.
Oh, a grade for one school.
Yeah. So in 18 years. So that's one maybe unbudgeted need we didn't really push too far on, but.
That's all the more reason for a capital stabilization fund. Wouldn't this also qualify for that?
This is the CPS.
CPS.
We wouldn't do that at the.
We can't.
No.
Yeah. So in 18 years with this money, we could.
Have all new desks in the elementary schools. Yeah.
So the out-of-district tuitions is a $10K decrease from last year. The gross costs, the actual tuitions we're paying are down $20,000. The offsets we're getting for circuit breaker and IDEA actually declined slightly. But overall, it's still
Right, so this is still about
positive.
15 kids. So that's just really good.
I do know I've looked at the state averages, the percentage of students we have out of district. I think the state average is closer, somewhere between 2 and 3. We're just a little bit over 1%, 1.25%, something like that. This just shows you the overall budget. The increase is relatively even across both categories. This is just reminder of, I just thought it would be important to highlight the middle school transition specifically, the $576,000. Electricity costs were based on guidance from SMMA. Actually, there's a little bit more savings realized in energy costs at the new middle school versus the previous 2, another $91,000. we factored in a wastewater treatment facility contract into this. We do have some savings from no longer being responsible for 2 old buildings that have significant maintenance, so the wastewater treatment and that kind of offset. And there's no cost for Sanborn or Peabody factored into the 26 budget. And we'll need a vote later on that. Not tonight, but the homeless grant funding, we're estimating funding this year of about $600,000. The transportation here, we're projecting at $254,000. We will follow up with the town to make sure that we're able to move forward with that same language to get that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. I'm not going to go into it now, but the timing of our expenses and what gets reimbursed is not quite aligned, but we'll.
We talked about it last year, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Some of them know. It's just too far delayed. We front everything and wait.
It's hard.
Yeah.
The use of the homeless grant funds, so, when we've talked about comparisons of staffing, these are not included, these are grant funded. We have a liaison, wonderful liaison, Andrea Oler, an instructional aide at Alcott supporting a shelter student, adjustment counselor at Willard, EL teacher at Willard, in addition to the regular EL teacher. Instructional aides, there's 4 each in grades 1 and 2. Grades K and 1. We have summer school program, and we also provide some contract services, professional development staff, and trauma-based support.
It's pretty remarkable that the grant covers that.
That's a great grant.
Yeah, it's probably the best subsidy that really does the job it's supposed to do that I've seen in my entire career, honestly. So kudos to the state for keeping districts intact while all this played out,
So that's the budget. So just to clarify, confirm, where the guideline was 2.4%, or at 2.4%. So we've reached the guideline. There's no complicated calculation for CPS like there is for the region. This one's straightforward. And we knew it was going to be a lower number this year with the consolidation savings. In addition to the budget, we have items that we need to bring to town meeting, and we wanted to put them on your radar now. We talked about accepting students, Carlisle specifically was mentioned, into our programs, K to 8. We already have this fund at the CCRSD, which can be voted by school committee, but for a municipal district, school committee has to approve it, and then it has to go to the town meeting. So we'll need this to be approved at some point during this year's budget process by the school committee, and then we'll bring it forward as a warrant to the town. Again, this provides value. Not just financially, but educationally. We have students that might not have cohorts that are big enough, and this will give them a cohort with peers in their programs. It can benefit the Senate district and also benefits both CPS and then eventually the region. So we also, at a later time might want to consider the fee. We charge $45,000. Maybe we do some type of inflationary increase. I don't know, but that's separate discussion when fees
When
come
was
up.
that set? That was pretty recent, right?
2 years.
Couple years, yeah. Hasn't been that long.
Okay.
And I think technically we'll need to set one for CPS since we set one for the region. We never voted one for the CPS, so we'll need to vote one. Anyway, so establishing that fund, I think, is straightforward. We also request to create a facilities rental revolving fund right now. It's a little bit kludgy. I will say the rental revenue we have goes directly to the town of Concord. We do have a mechanism to offset some custodial costs if they have to work overtime to cover an event. A lot of our usage happens when our second shift is already there, but we anticipate in the new building that we may need coverage. It's an attractive, nice new gym.
Right, so does the check just get paid to Concord Public Schools, and then you deposit it into this account?
That's what the
That's what we
plans
want
are.
to do.
Exactly what it is.
Right now, it gets made to the town of
Right now it goes
Concord,
to
and
the town, and we don't see it.
Yeah.
So maybe at the next meeting, you could just go through in a little more detail. Why wouldn't a fee for, we have to pay custodial fees if anybody's in the building after working hours, right? So weekends is always a custodial fee, no matter what, right?
Well, a lot of our usage is weeknights. We don't charge custodial fee for
Well,
that.
going forward, I would expect the gym to be very highly used on the weekends.
Yes, that's what.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
No, then.
So there's going to be a little bit of tension between people who think some of that money should go back to the town because all the taxpayers paid for the building. So, I think we have to balance, like, we need to cover our custodial costs.
Right.
And then.
But we also need to cover the operating costs of running the gym that are
Right, but
on us.
are we taking it offline every weekend? I don't think so. But, I mean, that's why I just like a little more information, like, really what happens with, I understand the weekday, the building is online until X hours on the weekdays. So,
Why, help me understand, why is there an intellectual difference of like the taxpayers, the
this goes back to
taxpayer?
the general fund, not back to us as a department of the town.
But ultimately, that goes to the school budget versus the town budget. So like, aren't we both the taxpayer? Aren't we just?
I don't know. I have to think about it a little more.
I'm not I'm not following through on like the
See, to
intellectual
me,
process.
I think you want all the fees to come to us, so when we have to refinish that floor, you've got
Right.
money because of the usage that it had. That sort of is
Once the
my
building
logic.
So,
is.
wait, that's a capital, that's capital.
Well, no, I mean, I think like the waxing of the
Yeah, the
floor each summer is
refinishing.
not capital.
10 years, you're gonna have to sand it down like we're about to have to do at the high school.
Well, and so that's in, I guess that's sort of where.
We'd have to
I'm
decide.
sure- Yeah, I don't
I'm also
know.
concerned about, I think the fees should go up as well.
Yeah.
They should be comparable to the high school fees.
Well, we looked at that, we did look at that when we did extensive facilities fees. No, but it was gym rental. It's not like it's not free. It's certainly not free.
Yeah.
No, but isn't the gym comparable to the high school gym in terms of the space? It's not just.
Yeah, but I don't remember the fee structure.
We will have a separate discussion on this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have a separate discussion on this. It's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah, thank you.
If we could just get that information, then what other towns do? A couple?
All my other communities, the money came back to the schools.
Yeah.
They have a fund?
You're paying, you're paying for heat when
because once
it's
it goes-
on the
yeah.
weekend, you've got the
If we
lights
could
on
just-
when you don't
If we
normally.
could bolster our argument with that information,
Yeah, like, great.
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. And then the last item is that Peabody will need to be declared surplus to requirements of the school district by the school committee, where we've asked for, through town administration, for specific warrant language that's needed. I also asked if we could get school committee vote language. I don't know if that needs to be as formal, but we've asked for it.
So where we can Carrie and Anthony on that.
Yeah. So that will bring forward more specifics on that, but that needs to occur this year.
So my idea in the fall was to maybe not surplus the building, keep it in school committee and disposition ourselves, and maybe keep the money and put it in some sort of endowment. Turns out legally we can't do that. But listening to your capital stabilization, I'm wondering if we can talk to the select board, and if they do monetize it after disposition, sell it to a developer, whatever, they don't know what they're gonna do with it yet. Maybe we could get 10%
There you go.
10% of the proceeds and put them in a school stabilization fund or something like that.
If you can convince them to do that, I don't think that's, I would say that would be very atypical. It would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thought.
They also have, they haven't figured out what they're doing with the land yet, too.
Right, they might not sell it, I don't know.
I hope they do. but,
So there's 3 parcels, just
Old,
remember,
we're getting rid of it for a reason.
right? There's 3.
Yeah, there's like the weird septic and the.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so that's the presentation. Again, we're at guideline, and I think this one's a little bit more straightforward.
I think Shelley's here and has been listening all night, but what didn't pop, because we managed the costs within similar numbers to what we've been using in the past, Shelley and the principals, really with Shelley's leadership, we dove deep into all the professional development lines. This is true at the high school too, but it's important here because the numbers are bigger. Dove into that, really fleshed out what high-quality PD we want to do next year on very specific topics, middle school and elementary. And then, because we did that, we had some money to reallocate. So the 100,000 for the new literacy program, which is really half of it, is really coming from a reallocation of 60,000 that was in the budget for middle school math last year. So this is smart, right, to carry some amount of money for texts and curriculum changes. So we shifted that over, and then because we needed more, we were able to reconfigure the PD and some of the other teaching and learning lines. We did a really deep dive there, Shelley mostly, and talk about zero base, like kind of threw out anything we'd done in the past and started over again. So
You could see that at
that's
the
why it's not
100 level.
popping, because Bob pulls things that pop.
Right, but when you
Deltas.
looked at the 100 level, it popped for me, and I was hoping that that was the result of you guys working together, and even like synthesizing, just Cynthia and I were in like some of the feedback from the unions during
Yeah,
our
yeah,
negotiations, so I think that's a really nice example of hearing feedback, synthesizing it, finding a creative way to execute it, so
And
thank
really,
you
we're
both for that, because I
getting-
did see it.
More for less, because we're so concentrated on what the PD is and how we're providing it. That said, there'll be PD to go with the literacy program, so we've got a placeholder in there. We might end up having to re-juggle that, but I couldn't hold everything, because if you read my storytelling, like we Open Circle, which is a discussion in and of itself with SEL curriculum and our saga there, but, you know, we're either going to have to push that off, find grant money, or give up something else to keep that plan going. So we did hit a point where it was like, okay, we can't keep all the wish list in there and make some,
it's all right.
Make some choices.
Yeah.
Choices.
I have a question probably for Shelley. If more than 50% of our teachers actually want to jump in on year one, do you have the resources to do that?
We are working through that, but I think right now, based on the current plan we have, it really would be about 50% of your staff, of your educators. It's really about what's the best approach, different models, like we've talked a lot with a lot of other districts, neighboring districts who are either ahead of us a bit in this process, in just their models, and we're really learning from like best practice. Or just the mistakes.
Or the mistakes, yeah.
Everyone jumped in and they weren't ready for
the worst practice, yeah.
And so one of the recommendations is like you could do a early adoption for those who are just really excited about it. But the challenge at the kind of professional district or school levels is we can't necessarily support different educators at different grade levels that don't have as much time to collaborate. So we're thinking about different options that way.
Okay.
But again, I think funding-wise, we've budgeted for a 2-year rollout of this so that every educator gets the
And I have some hope. DESI's,
Yeah.
because remember the math, the middle school, we got matching money from DESI.
Right.
So we're hoping they're going to post that, and then we might be able to do some of it through that.
There's this PRISM grant coming out.
Yeah.
It's called instructional, like high-quality instructional materials.
Okay.
That may be able to provide some support.
Yep.
I think it would be a February release date for that opportunity.
So we're watching for that.
Yeah.
Just thought it was worth noting. It's a big line item, but it kind of, because of how we got there, it didn't necessarily make the slides.
Good.
Very exciting on many levels. So this budget probably does a lot of very targeted things that move us forward in a big way, more than some of the others in previous years. So that's great.
And it's in guidelines. So it's even
And it's good. And we did it in guideline. Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Which, thanks to the FinCom, that meeting on the 19th.
Roller coaster.
That was a roller coaster. Yeah.
Well, I know that you two worked all weekend to make
They did, yeah.
these presentations a possibility, so thank you very much.
I tried 1.5 speed too, but it wasn't me, it was everybody else.
We broke that, yeah. But anyway, thank you very much. It's noted in the work you can see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And more to come.
More to come, yeah, we'll talk more on the 21st.
So,
Can I just talk process? We're gonna, you need to have a public hearing.
yep.
What looks like the best plan, and we've done this before, we do the public hearing at the beginning of a meeting, and then our recommendation is you do that on the 5th or the 4th of February, which would mean you'd have the public hearing and still vote at the end of the night. We've done that before. As long as you have the hearing, you have the chance to adjust things if you hear things at the hearing. So that's our recommendation, is you hold the hearing on the 4th.
My bedtime.
just need to know for sure. I have to advertise that. It's a requirement that I
think we should just plan for that.
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Okay.
And at that, do we have to say these 4 warrant articles?
Yeah, because the warrant's going to close the 19th.
Yeah, okay.
Not the public hearing, though. It's a budget public hearing.
It's just the
The
operating.
public hearing's just the budget, she's correct.
Okay.
But that same night, you have to make
Yes.
decisions on your warrant
The warrant, the
articles.
same, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, the really important one to nail are the budgets. And then what's happening with the CPS? Are we moving one warrant article with the town, or?
No, that never materialized.
Okay.
Did it?
For,
Like the omnibus budget or whatever?
no, I think,
No, that never materialized.
no, that never became a formal piece. I think we've done some of the same efforts behind the scenes and in public to get.
So we have a
budget that's
separate.
collected.
We will have a
public
separate
schools.
article.
It will
That's
be-
my understanding.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's been any
But the
formal.
pieces in there can move, the number can't. We've changed our capital plan many times after we've done the warrant article.
Yeah, no, and once you vote a number, we can keep bringing to you whatever things we're
Just
gonna.
it can't grow.
It can't grow, correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you,
or-
everyone.
Oh,
Yeah,
No, thank
the
you.
agenda or tonight?
just period. Adjourn.
No, we have the Thoreau CPC.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, just a quick comment. I was asked to go back.
We were going through all of these, I missed it.
Yeah,
You're right. Thank
I
you.
was asked to go back to CPC on the 14th, just to clarify some questions they have on the Thoreau application for the campus improvements over there. So I was already going to be there. I'll be there anyway for the amenities. But I don't know if that'll be a long conversation. They need some follow-up.
So right now, they haven't allocated a number yet, because they're waiting to have more
I
discussion?
think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a long conversation.
Yeah. I just like,
I think that's it.
Yeah, we are.
This one.
Anybody else?
We did it.
2 seconds.
No, we didn't do this one.
Oh, yes.
yeah, go ahead.
All right.
We didn't do that?
We're going to potentially bring
Since
one
we
other.
made an agenda. we-
Potentially bring one other warrant to get an extended procurement period for bus leases and subscriptions. We want to have the ability to do 5 years for bus leases. We're doing that now, full disclosure. And I
With
was,
legal counsel support.
yeah, and I want to have something in writing. There's a way to do it where we never have to go ask for a vote again. And then in addition, we're talking about reading subscriptions, things like that. The price breaks after 3 years are huge. Like, I can't tell you how big some of them are. You end up paying for things more than you need to if you renew every 3 years. So I would like to have language that allows us to go to 6 years, up to 6 years. Of course, we'll be smart about, like, we're not going to pay for a 6-year subscription if it's not financially viable, but you might pay, instead of $100 for 3 years, you might pay $130 for 6 years. Like, those types of discounts sometimes happen. So having language that allows us to do curriculum subscriptions for up to 6 years. So those are things I think we may bring forward. We're going to talk to the town, because I think the town may have a couple items that are quirky, that are town things. I don't know if it's paving or what, but, so we need to find out whether they're going to bring things forward. And I'd like to do this in partnership with them, but I just wanted to mention it in case we bring it.
That's great.
Yeah, that's going to be my question. And I told you. All right, now.
Now, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Great.
Have a good night, everybody.
Same to you.